at worst. We have no collective control over the qualitative factors which determine our lives. We do not, in other words, control our destiny, not as a people or a state. The book is Stand Up, Struggle Forward by Sanyika Shakur.
Program.
Well, it must be Wisconsin Wednesday. Time for Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls at 202-808-9925. If you're new to the program, Congressman Pocan is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. The Big Cheese Progressive in Washington, D.C. also represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin. Pocan.house.gov, Pocan.house.gov is his website. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan. And Congressman Pocan, you had Donald Trump in your neck of the woods yesterday. How did that go?
He didn't bring multiple cans of kerosene. He just did what he's now got as a national campaign theme, which is law and order. You know, he came to Kenosha where African-American man was shot 7 times in the back, short range, in front of his children, where white vigilantes and militia were allowed to walk down the roads with guns and kill 2 protesters. And he came to thank law enforcement rather than realizing that we have a serious policing problem in this country, including in my hometown of Kenosha that I went to yesterday and saw the damage firsthand. So, you know, the president didn't do anything for the people of Kenosha. He didn't bring any resources. He just came, did a photo op, probably going to be a future commercial, part of his law and order message. But fortunately, Joe Biden is coming tomorrow, Thursday, to Kenosha. And I think what they need is a message of unity and reconciliation. And I think that's what he's coming to do. But, you know, Donald Trump continues to not condemn the vigilantes, the militia, the people that came in from outside of Kenosha. The majority of people arrested were not from Kenosha through all of this. And Donald Trump seems to egg those people on. So it was, I guess, good to see it firsthand, but also kind of sad to see what happened in my hometown.
Yeah. I'm wondering, you know, while Joyce is setting up phone calls here for you, what is at the top of your list? What's on your mind? I didn't get a chance to ask you that. Typically, we start with that. And well, let's just start there. What do you see as the important stuff that's going on right now?
Sure. So, I mean, clearly what happened, you know, this week in Wisconsin is very much on top of mind because it's last week and then this week continued in Wisconsin, and it's having a big impact. But also, you know, today's the day the House Democrats around the country are doing events. I had a press conference this morning where we try to talk about, you know, that we're about to reopen schools, depending on the local community. It may be virtual, it may be in person, it may be a mix. But no matter if it's virtual or in person, there's additional resources need to do this safely for the students, for the educators, and other staff, for the families of the students. And because the House Democrats did the HEROES Act back in May and the Republicans and the president have yet to do anything else, we are afraid that schools may not be able to reopen as safely as they should, and that's why we need to get the Senate and the president back to the negotiating table and get a COVID package done that provides, we think, about $300 billion. has agreed to. So we've got that. I think the real issue that I'm most concerned about, Joe, and I think you would be too, is we want to make sure that when Joe Biden is elected and we have a Senate and a House, that we have a strategy to actually get that policy to get votes and be enacted. And I think some of that is going to take some real grassroots organizing.
Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the first hour of our program today. It's Middays with Mark, our regular first hour Wednesday session with Congressman Pocan. He is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin in the U.S. House of Representatives. Pocan, POCAN.house.gov is his website, and you can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan in just a moment. And welcome back. Omar in Herndon, Virginia. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Tom, thank you so much for the platform, Mr. Pocan, from the fine, great state of Wisconsin. Thank you for making yourself available. I haven't made a slogan for the Progressive Caucus. Trump has "Make America Great." The Progressive Caucus slogan should be "Progressive and Proud." And when people ask you what does that mean we are unapologetically pro-progressive agenda. That's it. So "Progressive and Proud" is our slogan. Repeat that. And what I wanted to ask you, sir, is that. I read an article that prior to the pandemic, almost 70% of all masks are coming from China. Now it's down to like 30%. So it's very obvious that the pandemic is reversing globalization. What is Congress going to do to resurrect a home-based manufacturer, to steer the wheels of the American economy, like Richard Wolff say, to create a home-based manufacturer? Thank you.
Yeah. Omar, great point. And, we still haven't turned it around making of drugs. Most prescription drugs and generics are made overseas, and that has all sorts of problems. So we have a lot more work to do. We may be having some more masks made here, but we're still having a problem getting gowns and everything else that isn't made here. Certainly have a problem on prescription drugs and a lot of other goods. So that is something that I'm hoping in the Biden administration we take on very early. The good news is I think members of Congress, including Republican members of Congress, are starting to see a part of that problem. The problem is as soon as one company or one trade association says it's going to affect their profits, the Republicans will go and decide that they're okay with things being produced overseas that we need to produce here. So we just have to make sure as Democrats, especially if we have majorities along with Joe Biden, that we get something done that helps to incentivize jobs in America and not give all those tax breaks we give right now to companies that produce things overseas.
Nick in Seattle, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, gentlemen. Glad to see that you're both doing the kindness that you're doing. My question is this. I've heard so much about the shooting in Kenosha, Congressman. Can you give me, either one of you actually, any details on the character of this individual who was shot as to, for instance, why the police were even called in? What's his history? I have heard nothing about this. And when I want to come to a conclusion, I want to have the facts. Can you...
Got it.
Yeah. So, Nick, the conclusion you need to come to is it appropriate for someone who, you've all seen the video, I hope you have, millions and millions and millions of people have, whether or not it was appropriate for a police officer to fire 7 times close range into the back of someone who didn't pose an imminent threat, whose children were in the car, and the next day or the next day after that, when armed white vigilantes and militia are going down the road with long guns, they're given water by the police and allowed to pass. That's what you need to know, honestly, because the problem is this president, and I think Nick already knows this, but I'll go ahead and humor him with this. This president has egged on those vigilantes and militia, and by much of his cloak language is encouraging it, and that's the real problem we have.
Yeah, I don't care if this guy was Charlie Manson. That's not how police should behave. You don't shoot people in the back 7 times
exactly
when they don't represent a threat. It's just the bottom line. It's 20 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan in just a moment. Stick around. The Hartmann Report is a free daily podcast 7 days a week, and you can find our entire 3-hour podcast over at thomhartmann.com. Hi, Thom Hartmann here. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, I'll be taking you from the birth of America as a revolt against monopoly, remember the Boston Tea Party, to the largely successful efforts of both Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and other like-minded leaders to constrain corporations' monopolistic urges, to the massive changes in the rules of business starting during the Reagan Revolution that have brought us into the cancer stage of capitalism. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, "This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation." End quote. It's the fourth in my Hidden History series, available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag, you're it. And welcome back. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. Kathy in Indianapolis, Indiana. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, guys. Thank you for fighting for us, by the way. But I go absolutely bonkers. I go absolutely bonkers when the Republicans bring up Hunter Biden, and the Democrats just don't know how to fight dirty, and which is good. But why isn't the instant response, okay, then let's talk about Jared and Ivanka? I don't understand that. Why don't we immediately respond with, okay, well, let's investigate Jared and Ivanka, and Ivanka's China trademark, Jared's deal with the Saudis? I just don't understand why it's not an immediate response.
Yeah, Kathy, I hear you. Sometimes, though, you don't respond to every question because they want to distract you. Donald Trump, the reason he's talking about law and order, even though he's done nothing but create chaos and disorder, from everything from COVID to 100,000 small businesses closing down because of the situation he's caused around COVID, because of racial tensions. He wants to make you talk about anything but COVID. And that's why they throw different, pieces of spaghetti on the wall, hoping something will stick. And generally, it's best not to chase that, because people really are focused on what's happening with the economy, with their families' health, with schools reopening, all because of the president's disastrous response and continued failure at dealing with COVID. So I think, we're best sticking to what people are really thinking about, not following every little shiny object they throw out there trying to distract us. And even like when he went to Kenosha, that was the message we had. I was down there yesterday, and we said, this is the problem is he keeps telling you, watch out for Joe Biden's America. Well, this is Donald Trump's America. This is Donald Trump's America with the racial tensions and the vigilantes and militia that are egged on by the president. That is what people have to remember. And as long as we stick to those points, I think we're much stronger. What people really care about and are thinking about, and let them throw the distractions. We don't have to take that bait.
Nick in Troy, Michigan. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. My question is related to quarantine protocol. We, have seen in state houses and on Capitol Hill across this country, politicians who have refused to follow the very protocols that they have put out as far as quarantining. Last weekend, we saw Speaker Pelosi visit a shuttered salon, not wearing a mask. We've seen this from both Democrats and Republicans. My question is, what are we going to do to hold these politicians accountable and hold them to the same standard that they are asking us as citizens to be held to?
It's amazing
Nick,
the number of GOP paid callers I'm getting these days. It's been like 4 or 5 a day.
Because we don't have a quarantine in place. So, I know Nick is trying to say something. And often, when we do a press conference, just so people can understand, when you see someone talking without a mask, we do it so people can understand us. But we often will go up to the mic, take off the mask, do that part of speaking on the floor or a press conference, and you put the mask immediately back on, which is the protocol you're supposed to. There is no quarantine, although some Republican politicians who haven't worn masks have gotten COVID and have been really silly and not followed. Then they should have protocol if they test positive. But Nancy Pelosi didn't test positive. She doesn't go around not wearing a mask. So Nick is one of your callers that you were warning me about last week.
Yeah. Well, actually, she apparently was in this shop without a mask, and Trump is tweeting about it. So it's all over Fox News right now. Well, it's all over the place. But anyway, Kimone in
I've watched
Dayton,
her
Ohio.
even when.
Say that.
Yeah, whenever we can have meetings, she makes sure that she's wearing it until you're at a point where you're either especially social distance, or she's speaking on the floor. But I've watched her in action and how she operates on the floor. And because that was probably something in that store they were doing for camera purposes, the mask came down. But again, if that's where they're at, we're winning, right? If that's the best argument they have versus the 180,000 people died because of failed COVID policies, Tom, we're going to be winning.
Yeah. Kimone in Dayton, Ohio. We have just a minute to the break. Kimone, got a quick one?
Yes, I'd like to know what the DNC is doing to assist the Senate races in Kentucky and South Carolina. It appears that those two races should be easy to win.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, they're working hard. They're raising money. They're doing a lot. I can't speak. Again, I think people sometimes say the wrong thing. DNC is a Democratic National Committee. I'm more worried about whatever the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee is doing or the actual campaigns on the ground. But I see both very active and raising a lot of money, doing a lot of field work. So you're right. We're not just letting Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell giving them a pass. This is an aggressive campaign to beat both of them, and they both should be beat. They haven't done anything this session. Every bill we've passed out of the House, they've sat on when it's gone to the Senate. So the caller's correct.
Yeah, and do you think that there's an actual chance that McConnell and Graham could lose?
Yeah, I think if Donald Trump continues to beat Donald Trump, because he will, so far the last 3.5 years has proved it, there's definite possibility they will not stand up to him. So a lot is to be on how Donald Trump acts and behaves.
Yeah, remarkable times we live in. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. We'll be back after the news here at the bottom of the hour with more.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan, the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, in our Middays with Mark segment right after this. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Health Justice Now, Single Payer and What Comes Next by Timothy Faust. And this is from the introduction. A secret scream rings through America. It rings down the sterile fluorescent hallways of our hospitals. It rings over our rural towns and our native reservations. It rings through our prisons, the bellies of our great cities. It rings in our farms and our fields, our streets and our sewers, our bodies and our blood. And we are cursed to never hear it clearly until, at last, we realize it has been our own mouth screaming and we are lost. A child born today inherits, in that secret, a new American squalor, the skeletal remains of the American cities, the bleached bones of the American suburbs. This secret is a birthright of continual exploitation, pumped for labor and drained of cash and then punished for the resulting suffering. Punished for being hungry, punished for being sick, punished for being pregnant, punished for being poor, punished for being black or brown, punished for being queer, for being unlucky, for being. At the base of that suffering is lodged a little truth, like a knot in the stomach. In America, sickness makes you poor, and poorness makes you sick. This is a book about that relationship and why it happens, and why it's unnecessary, and what we can do to fix it.
The cosmic whirling of God's great slot machine has not determined that some people are fated to suffer while others flourish. We have the resources to take care of everyone, and yet we refuse to do so. Your medical debt and medical bills are unnecessary, but we have chosen to make them necessary. These are structural problems with structural causes, and many of them share roots in how we pay for health care. This is a book about health care and health finance. They are different. Health care is anything that helps you stay safe and healthy. It's a kind of freedom from and within your own body. Health finance is the method by which we as a country pay for that freedom and by which we decide who gets to have it and who doesn't. Health care is more than what happens to you in the hospital. Health care is whether your home makes you sick, or your food makes you sick, or your environment makes you sick, or whether you have enough money to afford the things that keep you healthy. In America, the structure of corporate health care has convinced us that some people deserve health care and some people don't. This is a book about that corporate health finance, about private insurance and private insurers. For half a century, they've convinced us that they're the only things that keep us or could ever keep us from the utter financial ruination of illness. They've sold us different inadequate insurance plans and persuaded us that this is a form of great liberty, while chipping away at our freedoms for profit and holding our bodies and our children's bodies hostage. This is a book about single-payer health care, a health finance model in which we pool our abundant collective resources to provide health care to all people. It is a common model across the world. As we will discuss in this book, we have the potential not just to enact a single-payer program in America, but to build the greatest health care program among any so-called developed democracy. Here is my profession of faith. I believe beyond any doubt that single payer is demonstrably sound and imminently feasible. I believe a properly ambitious and well-structured single-payer program will do more than any other American social program of this generation to soothe the burns, to resuscitate the spirit, to nourish the moral will of the American people. I believe it will loosen the loathsome manacles of American health finance, an exploitative institution that profits by plundering from us our own bodily autonomy, and that anchors a larger exploitation that holds those whom we love as captive leverage to guarantee our servitude to abusive employers or domestic partners, to those who seek to dominate us both in the office and in the hospital. I believe this nation owes its people, whose labor has created its rich banquet, the safety and agency of health care. I believe this health care is greater in scope than that which happens upon an operating table. I believe that housing, food, income, and more, the components of basic human dignity, are health care. And I believe our work is that of striving toward justice for all people. And I therefore believe, I have to believe, that single-payer health care is our moral imperative. Single-payer is our tool. Single-payer is our weapon. Single-payer is our first step. But single-payer on its own is not the goal. This book is about health justice. Healthcare is personal, so I want to start this book personally by introducing two friends of mine, Steve Way and Kyle Kolick. They're two guys about my age, I'm 30, who live in North New Jersey. They're sweet, gentle people and probably the most charismatic pair of friends I've met in my entire life. They make me laugh until my face hurts, and we like watching pro wrestling together. They're also being utterly broken by our American healthcare system, and it's keeping them from living their lives. Steve has muscular dystrophy. The muscle and tissues that hold his body together are eating themselves. He's doing pretty good, all things considered. He beat his original life expectancy of 18 and now probably has a long life ahead of him. Steve needs a wheelchair to move and a ventilator to help him breathe. The book, Health Justice Now, Timothy Faust. Yeah.
In the science revolution this week, is Trump burying the pandemic, and will it work? Dr. Michael Mann is here about the Greenland ice sheet losing 1 million tons a minute. He'll explain what that means to us. Dr. Michael Greger drops by, and one of the most important questions right now, what can be done to stop the spread of animal-derived diseases? And director Dan Partland is here on his new film, Unfit, The Psychology of Donald Trump. Tune into the science revolution wherever fine podcasts are available. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. Middays with Mark. On the line, Eddie in Agra, Kansas. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Congressman, why can't we take and put our people back to work? You know, we're really needing another stimulus, but instead of just giving a welfare check, why can't we rebuild our roads and build even some more roads? But a lot of our roads are in desperate repair. And so instead of having Trump and everybody saying a handout, why can't we give us people jobs rebuilding our roads and things that need to be rebuilt?
Yeah, Eddie, the House did just that. We passed a big infrastructure bill that invested in roads and bridges, rebuilding schools, broadband into rural areas and in urban areas, water delivery systems, energy grids. And Republicans, again, didn't take up the legislation. So you're completely right. And I predict that in a Biden administration, in the first, I think, 6 months, there will be a major infrastructure bill that passes through Congress, especially if we have the House and Senate, because that is one way, as we're getting out of all of this with COVID, that we can get people back to work, and we seriously need to rebuild our infrastructure. So, Eddie, we tried. Republicans didn't go there, but you're absolutely right. That's what we need to do.
Al in Los Angeles, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. I wanted to ask about the status of the stimulus checks.
Yeah, there's not another check approved because nothing has been approved in COVID. So other than that first check, if you didn't get that, you should reach out to your member of Congress or the Senate to find out why, unless you didn't qualify, of course, because some people are going to wind up getting it on their taxes if there were some issues. But any additional check would have to come out of a COVID package. And again, the Republicans, because they haven't moved and they've gone home, there's nothing pending to provide any stimulus.
You guys passed an extension of $600 a week all the way through the end of the year into January with the HEROES Act back 2 months ago. Did you not?
Correct. Back in May, longer than 2 months ago. Yeah.
Wow.
And we had some other stimulus support, like Al was talking about, plus local state funding, plus funding for more testing, plus more protections for frontline workers, more help for small businesses, and all the stuff that you would have thought would have been a no-brainer. But unfortunately, folks with maybe smaller brains aren't really acting on those things, and that's been the problem. So people are feeling some pain right now, and it's unnecessary because we as a government should be able to do that. The Republicans just haven't passed anything in the Senate, and the president's not coming back to the table to negotiate.
Amazing. Amir in Los Angeles, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Good morning, Mark and Tom. But thanks for everything that you guys do. Mark, what did you guys kind of like put a name on Trump, like the same way that he does with his Sleepy Joe, and because that resonates with the people big time. I mean, it would help to just like kind of shows his ignorance and you know what I'm trying to say?
I do, Amir, although I may, somewhat disagree with you in that I don't think Sleepy Joe is actually resonating because no one thinks he's sleepy. And he's, when you see him give a speech like he did Monday about what happened in Kenosha and our racial tensions across the country, that was really powerful. And, Donald Trump just acts like a fourth grader. There's the old saying that if you get in the mud with a pig, that you're going to lose because the pig actually enjoys rolling around in the mud. I'm not saying the president's a pig, but I'm using the comparison that he enjoys getting into fourth grade insults back and forth. And I don't really think they're having a effect right now. People are most afraid that their family's going to get sick and someone might die, or that they don't have a job because of COVID, or their small businesses hurt because of COVID, and it all goes back to the president not responding properly. Instead, he's trying to create chaos and disarray so you don't remember what he's doing to you. And, I think we win on that message if we don't let him distract us with nicknames or shiny objects, and instead focus on what real people talk about and think about every day. That's why we're doing well right now in the polling, and I think that's why we'll win in November.
Eric in Erie, Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Representative Pocan, I have a question for you, and I'm wondering if I'm an extremist. I have increasingly over my adult years, I'm going to be 50 in about a month, concerns over the growing sectarian religious demagoguery that comes into our public spaces and our public offices. And for me, an ideal American world would be one where religious behavior is, in the eyes of the law, treated just like sexual behavior. It's a thing we all do, but we don't have to see each other doing it. You can go to your places of worship and do it there and in your home and parochial schools, but the increased violence and a lot of the really vitriolic kind of polarization, the tip of that spear seems to almost always be moral judgment that is couched in somebody's sectarian religion. Is it time to prohibit the use of religious demagoguery in total in our legislatures, our courts, and in all public spaces?
Well, Eric, I think I hear what you're saying, and I think I would say it's slightly different, only slightly different, though, is that clearly this was a nation founded on a separation between religion and state. And if we actually listen to our founders, as we often try to, then we would not have religion having a say in the public laws that happen. You're right that all too often people try to wear it on their sleeve and they use it for emotional reasons and political reasons. But, look at Donald Trump. I mean, from 2 Corinthians to clearing out the protesters, peaceful protesters in Lafayette Square so he could hold a Bible awkwardly in front of a photo op in front of a church. He's a charlatan, and people know that. And while certainly many people do use their version of religion to define things, and I think, again, if we kept that out of the public discourse, that would be the best. But when Donald Trump does it, some people are falling for it, but a whole lot of others aren't. In fact, I know some people that are very religious that I've talked to that are close to my family who were really turned off when he did that in Lafayette Square. So, you are completely right. We should have a nation that separates religion, state and religion as much as possible. Let me take that back. Not as much as possible. That's what we were founded on. We should be doing that. But at the same time, some of those people that abuse it, like Donald Trump, aren't getting away with it.
Peter in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, congressmen. In regards to Kenosha and Trump going up there, I can see why the mayor and the governor didn't want him to go, because I'm sure you followed it and you were seeing the long lines of Trump supporters up and down the roads greeting him as he came through. As far as the riots go, Democrats have been silent since George Floyd riots. Not one, especially Joe Biden, has come out, except for just the other day when Joe had to come out against it because the polls and Don Lemon were saying, it's going against us now. So my question is, Joe seems to just want to come out, throw a shot, and then go back in the basement. When is he going to stand in front of the press, which is the people of this country, and answer questions that aren't fed to him prior to the press conference? And as the
There's another one of your callers, Congressman.
Yeah, actually, he called last week. I remember Peter from Chicago.
Oh, really?
He did the same thing. Yeah, he did. I remember the name.
Him.
So
that's okay.
Yeah. And here's what's interesting. Just for clarity, I was in Kenosha yesterday visiting my 91-year-old mom, and I did do a little event to talk about, we did a little press conference about Donald Trump coming, and, there were as many supporters as detractors, and there weren't many of either outside where he was doing his event, honestly. People in Kenosha are really concerned about what's happened. They don't care so much about the politics, one party or the other. They just want to know that their community is going to be safe, whether it be in how policing happens or in how any violence occurs. And, that's why I think when Joe Biden comes tomorrow, which he is coming tomorrow, so this whole basement myth doesn't exactly work unless Kenosha is in Joe Biden's basement. I'm not sure if it is. I know it's not. He's going to talk about unity and reconciliation. He's going to meet with the family of Jacob Blake, and he's doing everything that a president should have done. But Donald Trump, because he's never been up to the job, and he's still not up to the job, didn't do. So, Peter is one of your callers like that, Tom, but at least it gave me a chance to talk about the truth of what's happening. I was actually there, and whatever right-wing talking point he gave, again, either he knows it's a lie or he's just a really, really gullible, somewhat ignorant person.
Or he made $50 for getting through to a national program.
Yeah, he doesn't. I think he falls in the gullible and ignorant category, quite honestly. So.
Yeah. Well, pretty straightforward stuff. Whoops, hang on just a second here. Somehow things just got changed. Yeah, his number that 8135. I'm sorry. That keeps flipping over. Anyhow, we've got him flagged. Here we go, 1601.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
In the 847 area code. We'll be right back. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. And welcome back. Deborah in Victorville, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. Congressman Pocan, I want to know, hopefully Wisconsin will be successful in extraditing Kyle Rittenhouse, but also what about charging his mother for allegedly driving him from Illinois and giving him the weapon that he used to kill the two protesters? I have family in Kenosha, so that's why I'm concerned.
And let me add to that, Congressman, if I may. I thought driving across state lines to commit a crime was a federal crime. I know about the Mann Act and that back when J. Edgar Hoover was running the FBI, most of what they did was car theft because, that was easy to solve and help their crime statistics, but it involved having to cross state lines. Why is the Justice Department not looking into this?
Yeah, well, the Justice Department's not going to look into anything that's going to make Donald Trump look bad. And I think whether it be our Attorney General or the local law enforcement in Kenosha, they're going to have to make any charging decisions. So I really can't speak specifically to that, Deborah. What I can say, though, is, what I think where Donald Trump is failing on his law and order message is one, people realize that he just thrives off of chaos and disorder, and that's what he's trying to create when he goes around and does this, whether it be Kenosha or Portland or Minneapolis. But most people, again, people who just don't live and breathe politics or just concerned for their family, are equally concerned about 17-year-old kids walking down the street with long rifles deciding they're law enforcement. And the fact that Donald Trump eggs them on and encourages them, I think is far more troubling from what we're hearing from that suburban voter that Donald Trump is trying to get back again. So I don't think he's winning on this message because ultimately people don't believe in vigilantes and militias and in their self-governing style of law enforcement. And I think it's going to seriously backfire.
Samuel in Santa Ana, California, listening on KPFK. You're on with Congressman Pocan.
Congressman Pocan, Bloomberg said that he was going to spend $500 million or more going up against Biden. Where is all the money? Why aren't the other congressmen speaking about it?
Yeah, Samuel, I can't speak for Mike Bloomberg, so I don't know. But I know that I don't think they're hurting for resources. People have been very generous around the country, and I haven't heard that they're concerned. And the main thing that I watch is Wisconsin. 4 years ago, we had very little activity from the presidential campaign because I think they thought they had it in the bag, and then we lost it by just under 23,000. That's not the case. Every media market Joe Biden is up in Wisconsin. He's visiting tomorrow. There have been plenty of virtual conversations with people from Wisconsin. There's a lot of organizers on the ground. So I just don't know what Mike Bloomberg is up to, but I also don't see a problem in what I'm witnessing, at least in Wisconsin, from the campaign.
Congressman, we just have about 25 seconds or 20 seconds left. Are you optimistic that Joe Biden's going to win?
I am. I think if we all focus on voting in early, get those absentee ballots in right away, make sure everyone gets the absentee ballot, gets it in right away, and then we know it's going to be counted, and we don't dilly-dally and wait till the Friday before and then have to have concerns. I feel that we will win, but that's the important part. Is we have to get those ballots and vote early and encourage others to do so.
From your lips to God's ears, as the old saying goes. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour. It's Middays with Mark, Congressman Mark Pocan, taking your calls for the hour. We'll be right back. The hidden history of the Supreme Court tells the story of Nixon and Reagan's committing treason to steal the White House. So we've had a new video. Hi, Thom Hartmann here. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, I'll be taking you from the birth of America as a revolt against monopoly, remember the Boston Tea Party, to the largely successful efforts of both Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and other like-minded leaders to constrain corporations' monopolistic urges, to the massive changes in the rules of business starting during the Reagan Revolution that have brought us into the cancer stage of capitalism. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, "This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation." End quote. It's the fourth in my Hidden History series, available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag, you're it. And welcome back. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. And Wes in Chattanooga, Tennessee. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank you, Mr. Hartmann. Congressman, my main issue right now is about the census. Donald Trump has went through 2 census people, and I don't know what's going on with the census, but they are doing everything in their power to delay, divert, whatever, the full true count. They've got census workers that are not working and meetings that are supposed to be held that are not held. No one seems to want to be taking interest in the census. So I'll listen to your answer. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Wes, well, fortunately, there are a lot of folks, especially the committees with jurisdiction, are looking at this. The problem is Donald Trump ended the people going out, trying to do the work of the census early. And, my guess is that if Joe Biden's elected, we're going to probably have to revisit a little bit of census work because this is a truly hard time to get those counts under COVID. And if you have a president, taking people off the streets that are supposed to help finish that census, we're going to have to do it somehow. So there are people in committees working on this, rest assured, Wes. But don't personally worry about it. Other than plenty of people are very aware of what's going on and Donald Trump is doing to it, and we are looking at strategies to make sure we have a good and accurate census.
Brian in Fort Collins, Colorado. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank you very much, Congressman Pocan. What I'm concerned about is the powers of Congress. We see the executive branch consistently ignoring subpoenas and so. But Jackie Spear was talking about that in Article 1 there is an inherent contempt power, but that's what I see is that the Congress is constantly being stymied by the fact that it doesn't have any meaningful way to enforce subpoenas. Is there some inherent power, the ability to actually arrest people that ignore congressional subpoenas that you're aware of?
Yeah, Brian, I mean, part of the problem is we haven't had a president ever do what Donald Trump has done. And the other part of the problem is once you get to the legal side of it, it can take a long time. But unfortunately, Donald Trump has taught us, Congress, that we're going to need to do something so that any future president that might be acting like a demagogue or a despot like Donald Trump so often has by ignoring subpoenas, that we're going to need some stronger leverage and tools to make sure that we can have those things enforced. So we may have learned a lesson through this person, but the problem is it takes a lot longer to get resolution under current law, and that's something we're going to have to visit.
Carol in Madison, Wisconsin, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan. We just have 2 minutes to the end of the hour.
Yes, thank both of you so very much. Congressman, quick question. Is this not the time and the moment for both Vice President Kamala Harris as well as Joe Biden to begin to highlight the crime statistics under the 8 years he served with President Obama? Is this not the time and the moment to bring in all of those statistics and data to support the fact that, life was better, law and order were better? And that's my quick question for you at the moment.
Yeah, Carol, you're exactly right, but I would just take it a 30,000 foot, a little even higher level. I think the whole Republican convention was saying, watch out for Joe Biden's America, and they're showing all the gloom and doom. The reality is all that's happening under Donald Trump's America. And I remember Joe Biden's America and Barack Obama's America, where 8 years those things didn't happen. So I think you're right. Making sure that people understand all of this is happening, the COVID, the small business closings, the racial tension, under Donald Trump. And you can't blame Joe Biden for that. But those times were good times, and we should be talking about that and really emphasize that this is Donald Trump's, again, failure to lead, and that since we've seen no growth in the whole time he's been president, we shouldn't be expecting it. So great point.
Congressman, in our last 15 seconds or so, what should we be looking for in the following week?
Well, we're starting to be back in session after Labor Day, so be following Congress, be active in getting people to vote early. It's really important we all convince our friends and family members to do that. And last thing I just want to say, Tom, one of your listeners tagged both of us with information about every state when they do early vote counting. And you might want to take a look at that. And I want to thank your listeners for, as always, providing information to us.
Great. Is that over on Twitter?
Yeah, on Twitter. And they tagged both of us.
Great. Okay, I'll check it out. Congressman Pocan, thanks again for dropping by. It's great having you here every week. Thank you.
Absolutely, Tom. Of course. Thank you.
We'll be right back. It's, we're hitting the top of the hour. We'll continue our conversation right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support
an exotic
the Thom
flu
Hartmann Program. They are Omaha Steaks, gourmet you can trust. More information at omahasteaks.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro, phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. Plexiderm Wrinkle Reducer, real science, real results. More info at plexiderm.com, code TOM. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. And TEEF, TEEF, Smarter Pet Dental Health. For more information, teef.com, code TOM.
book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Revolutionary Love by Michael Lerner, a political manifesto to heal and transform the world. This is from the introduction. We Earthlings need to build a fundamental change of consciousness into ourselves and in every part of our national and global society in order to achieve the economic and political changes necessary to prevent the destruction of the life support system of Earth, in order to end global and domestic poverty and wealth inequality, to defeat racism, sexism, homophobia, and other forms of xenophobia, to protect human rights, to achieve social, economic, and environmental justice, and to achieve lasting global peace. This new consciousness is possible and can emerge through embracing revolutionary love, the struggle for a caring society, and a new bottom line in all our economic, political, legal, educational, and cultural institutions. This manifesto is written to show you how this can happen and how you can help make it possible. Liberal and progressive movements need to move beyond a focus on economic entitlements and political rights to embrace a new discourse of love, kindness, generosity, and awe. These are not some new agey smile and be nice formula or let's get into self-transformation before we change society kind of thinking. I'm calling for both our American and global societies to embrace a new bottom line so that every economic, political, societal, and cultural institution is considered efficient, rational, and or productive, not according to the old bottom line of how much these institutions maximize money, power, or ego, but rather how much they maximize love and generosity, kindness and forgiveness, ethical and environmentally sustainable behavior, social and economic justice. This new bottom line seeks to enhance our capacity to transcend a narrow utilitarian or instrumental way of viewing human beings and nature, so that we respond to other people as embodiments of the sacred, instead of thinking of them primarily in terms of how much they can serve our interests. And also so that we can respond to nature not solely as a resource for human needs, but rather through awe, wonder, and radical amazement at the beauty and grandeur of this universe. I call this new consciousness revolutionary love, and its goal is to create the caring society, caring for each other and caring for the earth. The vehicle to create this new consciousness we will call the Love and Justice Movement, and eventually the Love and Justice Party. The revolutionary possibility of love is the kind of love that breaks through those distortions of consciousness that make it difficult to implement a national environmental policy or to end the many forms of oppression that permeate our world. To really embrace revolutionary love requires us to develop a strategy way beyond anything currently being given serious attention in the media, the political parties, and even many of the social change movements. And it requires us to move beyond what seems realistic in terms of the contemporary frame of discourse. Yet there is no alternative if we're to solve the environmental crisis and prevent our society in the coming decades from moving further and further into reactionary nationalism and repression of our own humanity. We need a global mobilization of billions of people to solve the problem, and this manifesto outlines the first steps to making possible such a mobilization. To understand the urgency, let's consider our current environmental crisis. In 1992, thousands of scientists issued a collective statement warning of the impending dangers to the life support system of planet Earth. 25 years later, in December 2017, 15,364 scientists from 184 countries signed a new statement that reads, in part, "Since 1992, with the exception of stabilizing the stratospheric ozone layer, humanity has failed to make sufficient progress in generally solving these unforeseen environmental changes, and alarmingly, most of them are getting far worse. Especially troubling is the current trajectory of potentially catastrophic climate change due to rising greenhouse gases from burning fossil fuels and agricultural production, particularly from farming ruminants for meat consumption. Moreover, we have unleashed a mass extinction event, the sixth in roughly 540 million years, wherein many current life forms could be annihilated or at least committed to extinction by the end of this century. Humanity is now being given a second notice. We are jeopardizing our future by not reining in our intense but geologically and demographically uneven material consumption, and by not perceiving continued rapid population growth as a planetary driver
behind many ecological and even societal threats. By failing to adequately limit population growth, reassess the role of an economy rooted in growth, reduce greenhouse gases, incentivize renewable energy, protect habitat, restore ecosystems, curb pollution, halt defaunation, and constrain invasive alien species, humanity is not taking the urgent steps needed to safeguard our imperiled biosphere. End of quote from the scientists. And in October, well, it continues. The book is Revolutionary Love by Rabbi Michael Lerner.
Thank you so much.
This must cause the earth to warm in response. He goes on, oceans are
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So I'm wondering how you're dealing with the coronavirus. What's up with you and your family? And how do you think this is, well, not how do you think it's going to play out, but how is it playing out for you? I know a member of our family, an extended member of our family, is basically, soliciting folks to get together for a vacation next spring, in about 5-6 months. And boy, would I love to do that. But I'm looking at some of these surveys. This is a study that just came out. It's pretty remarkable. This research team looked at the populations of Spain, England, Italy, and Geneva, Switzerland. These are three countries and one city that participated in this study. This is done by a group of infectious disease specialists at the University of Cambridge in the UK. And they came to some rather startling conclusions. This is from a piece in Nature, the science magazine, by Smrit Malapati, which says for every 1,000 people infected with the coronavirus who are under the age of 50, almost none will die. And this is the point, of course, that Trump and all his buddies keep making. No, if you're under 50, no worries. For people in their 50s and early 60s, however, about 5 will die, more men than women. The risk then climbs steeply as the years accrue. For every 1,000 people in their mid-70s or older who get infected, around 116 will die. That's amazing. I think that's around 11.6% if you're over 70. Research teams in Spain, England, well, I shared that with you. The studies reveal that age is by far the strongest predictor of an infected person's risk of dying. This is referred to as the infection fatality ratio, IFR. They note, quote, COVID-19 is not just hazardous for elderly people, it is extremely dangerous for people in their mid-50s, 60s, and 70s. COVID-19 is more than 50 times more likely to be fatal for a 60-year-old than driving a car. And gender is also a strong risk factor, with men twice as likely to die from the coronavirus than women. So, we're just waiting for, some, whether it's a therapeutic or a vaccine or something like that. But until then, I'm personally not willing to take those kind of chances, being over 60. But apparently some people are. This is, in fact, Dr. Scott Atlas, I don't know how old he is, but this is the guy who is on Fox News all the time. He's not an infectious disease doctor. He's a radiologist. But of course, you get your MD, you study infectious disease at some point, but that's not his specialty. He's not an epidemiologist either. And he's been accused of promoting a herd immunity strategy. He's saying, I never advocated that strategy, said this a couple of days ago. But, the simple reality is Atlas this from Jacqueline Howard at CNN. An administration official told CNN all the policies that Atlas has pushed for are in the vein of a herd immunity strategy, which basically means let everybody get sick. And, the old or the unwell will die out, but, everybody else will. And this is how the human race has typically dealt with pandemics. The Black Plague killing a third of Europe, the Spanish flu in 1918. Although we did have mask laws in the United States during the 1918 flu. In fact, there was a famous trial here in Portland of a guy who refused to wear a mask. But, back to this piece by CNN, Atlas, this new doctor that Trump has brought in, and he's basically replaced Fauci and Birx. I mean, they're still on the committee, but he's just not listening to them and not trotting them out in front of the TVs. Atlas has rejected the need for widespread community testing, arguing that the administration should focus almost exclusively on protecting and testing elderly populations while pushing for the rest of the economy to return to normal. His strategy basically saying, with true herd immunity strategy, you just let everybody get sick, a bunch of people die off, those who survive have herd immunity. He's tweaked it a little bit. He's saying, let's isolate people over 70 and test them and protect them and let everybody else get sick. Now, that that ignores the study that I reported on last week that, and they were discussing this morning on CNN actually, that found that somewhere between 70 and 80%. This was a study out of Germany, and it was of 100 people who had gotten sick, who weren't severely ill, but they all had symptoms. Out of that 100, over 70 of them, and my recollection is it was 75 or 76 of them, roughly 3/4 of them, months later, were showing damage to their hearts and ongoing heart disease as a direct result of that COVID infection. And the median age for that group was 50. So if we were to go, full herd immunity, as Brianna Keeler points out, with a fatality rate of 1%, which seems to be the neighborhood where we're working in the United States, then if a little more than half of us, if 200 million of us were infected, you'd have 2 million dead people. And are we willing to have 2 million dead people? And would that produce the antibodies? Well, Sweden experimented with this for a while. They have the highest case fatality rate in Europe. In Norway, 48 out of 1,000 people, 48 out of 1 million people have died as a result of this virus. In Estonia, it's 48.2. In Finland, it's 60 out of 1 million. In Denmark, it's 107 out of 1 million. But in Sweden, it's 576 out of 1 million who died from coronavirus. And what did they get for that effort? Well, it turns out in Stockholm, only 7.3% have developed antibodies. And then we've got the situation where this American now has been reinfected with the coronavirus. The Hong Kong case was the one from 3 weeks ago. It got all the publicity. A guy got the coronavirus again. Now we have an American who got it again. It appears in both cases that they were infected with a different strain. First infected with what you could refer to as the Wuhan or China strain. The second time they're infected with what you could refer to as the European or Spanish and Italian strain. And that would suggest, and again, this is all speculative right now, nobody really knows, but that would suggest that if we're going to respond to this virus with vaccines, it's going to be like flu. If the vaccine doesn't target the specific strain that happens to be circulating, then it doesn't produce immunity. And this is where, some years we hit it with the flu virus and some years we don't. The vaccine is relatively ineffective. Sometimes it's very effective. It depends on, whether the vaccine developers hit it right. And if that's the case with the coronavirus, we're looking at a long-term situation that's going to, if this is the case, which is the caveat, and let's be very clear about that. But that means that we're looking possibly at literally a permanent long-term alteration in human behavior, which is pretty breathtaking when you think about it. Now, keep in mind, the flu has only been around for a few millennia. When Europeans came to the Americas, the main thing that wiped out indigenous populations, both in North, Central, and South America, wasn't weaponry, it was flu. And because they'd literally never been exposed to it. It was a brand new virus. But flu is nowhere near as fatal, particularly for people over 50, as is coronavirus. So while we've kind of worked our way around the flu, it's taken a while, and we've been through a lot to do it, but this is getting very, very interesting. Meanwhile, there's a White House cover-up around this. I'll tell you about that after the break. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just a moment. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, helping you win the water cooler wars. And welcome back. Morris in Long Beach, California. Hey, Morris, what's on your mind today?
Hey, good morning, my brother. Professor, I have a question for you. Let me know what you think. We've got a lot of pieces of legislation that's been passed that's been sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. I think they tease him about having a graveyard someplace in Kentucky for all that legislation. I'm thinking that when the blue wave comes in and takes over, because that's exactly what's going to happen, wouldn't it be a good idea to just jump on those pieces of legislation that they've already got in front of them and just start passing that right there instead of, waiting on some new ideas? I mean, they got a lot of pieces out there, a lot of good stuff. Bernie Sanders got stuff out there, a lot of good stuff. How about just jumping on that first?
The problem is that all of that legislation that's been passed in the last 2 years expires, if it hasn't been passed and signed by the president, it expires on January 3rd or 5th, whatever day Congress gets sworn in for the new term. So every congressional term is 2 years long, basically every even year. And at the end of that term, whatever legislation didn't get made into law vanishes. So you have to start over again. But, that said, starting over again probably won't be that difficult, Morris, because, the legislation's already written. All they have to do is reintroduce it and call for a vote.
Amen. Well, brother, you take care of yourself. I'll give it to you next week.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Good to hear from you, Morris. Mike in Lomita, California. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Yeah, I just wanted to disagree with you a bit about the recession having started in February, because 5 months earlier, in the middle of September, is when the Federal Reserve started secretly dumping money into the overnight repo market, the intercorporate short-term lending thing.
So you're thinking it actually started back in 2019 in September, October?
Yes, in September. They'd also, we found out later, had been printing money with more quantitative easing, the same thing they did to get out of the 2008 crash. And every time there's been one of these big financial crashes, you've seen these little pre-shocks that give a signal that the whole thing is about to come down, because the people on the inside and in the know start getting the willies. And I think that's what happened here in 2019. Oh, by the way, on Ma Rittenhouse and her criminal liability, I think they might not have an easy time proving her an accessory, but there is a statute in Wisconsin, as in most states, of contributing to the delinquency of a child. And normally it's a Class A misdemeanor in Wisconsin, but if the result of the contribution to delinquency is a death, then it's a felony. So I think she's probably liable there.
That's interesting. I know that he's being held in a juvenile detention facility right now in Illinois. And I would love to know more about exactly what's going on legally with this and, who, how, why. I thought it was pretty shocking yesterday that Trump would go praise the police and is essentially offer a defense for Rittenhouse, the killer, and refuse to mention Jacob Blake's name. It just blew my mind.
Well, it's really ironic to have someone advocating law and order who's never met a law that he chose to obey himself.
Yeah, one of the amazing things is that he thought that he could reach a settlement with Mueller if things went south for him. I mean, he's been charged with all kinds of crimes throughout his life, as well as civil things. And basically the way he always gets out of it is by paying somebody off. And he apparently thought he could pay off Mueller. This is a guy who has no respect for the rule of law at all. We'll be back. It's coming up on 20 minutes past the hour. You can help America return to democracy by telling friends and family how to listen to this and other great progressive programs. Tag You're It. Hi, Thom Hartmann here. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, I'll be taking you from the birth of America as a revolt against monopoly, remember the Boston Tea Party, to the largely successful efforts of both Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and other like-minded leaders to constrain corporations' monopolistic urges, to the massive changes in the rules of business starting during the Reagan Revolution that have brought us into the cancer stage of capitalism. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, "This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation." End quote. It's the fourth in my Hidden History series, available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag You're It. So this new report being withheld, or actually a series of reports being withheld from the White House. This just came out yesterday. As Jake Johnson writing about it over at Alternet, as President Donald Trump and administration officials have been publicly downplaying the COVID crisis, the White House task force has simultaneously been issuing dire assessments that are being sent to the red states, apparently. These assessments were kept secret from the public until Monday, when the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus released a trove of task force reports dated from June 23rd to August 9. And these show that the White House, well, this is, I'm quoting Jim Clyburn here, the task force reports released today show the White House has known since June that coronavirus cases were surging across the country and many states were becoming dangerous red zones where the virus was spreading fast. Rather than being straight with the American people, Clyburn said, and continuing a national plan or creating a national plan to fix the problem, the president and his enablers kept these alarming reports private while publicly downplaying the threat to millions of Americans. You know, and for example, on June 29th, Mike Pence said all 50 states are opening up safely and responsibly, whereas the task force issued a report right around that same time saying, quote, Mississippi reported a 117% increase in new cases in the week ending June 26th, resulting from increased community transmission in multiple counties attributed to reduced social distancing. And we've got there's a whole long list of the reports here. I won't bore you with them, but the bottom line is that at the same time the Trump administration was warning red states, look out, it's coming, get your act together. They were, you know, Trump and Pence and these guys were all saying to the public, oh, nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, I believe it's 120 countries. Let me see if I've got the exact number here. 170 countries. 170 countries around the world are collaborating on developing a vaccine. Some of them are, you know, have advanced pharmaceutical and whatnot capabilities. They're developing vaccines. Others are helping fund the research. Others, many of the poorer countries among them, are lining up basically populations, vulnerable populations on which vaccines could be tested to find out in small numbers, to find out if they're safe and effective, and in large numbers to see how effective they may be. So this is what is being done around the world, and it's being coordinated by the World Health Organization, as you would expect. I mean, that's the job of the World Health Organization. But because Donald Trump has been trash-talking the World Health Organization for the last year, or the last 6 months, because, they came out with a COVID test in January. We didn't have one until April. Maybe it was March. But it took us a while, right? Because the CDC developed a test and then it turned out it was contaminated, it didn't work, blah, 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 blah. And we still don't have nationwide testing. Whereas the CDC was shipping tests back in January, all over the world. They were made by a German company that had developed the test. We still don't have that test here in the United States. And because the World Health Organization made Trump look like a fool, He's refusing to participate in these vaccine trials all around the world with 170 other countries. We're going to go it alone. And he seems to think that if we develop the most successful vaccine and we went it alone, that we alone can inoculate our population and be the only country in the world with, actual vaccine-induced herd immunity. But what if our vaccines aren't the ones that work? What if China develops a vaccine that works first? They're hard at work on this. There are reports even that, they've been experimenting with some of these vaccines on a very expedited basis with the Uyghur populations, which would be probably a crime under international law. But and I can't verify it. Nobody's been able to verify that. But they're working on vaccines. The Russians have already announced a vaccine, Sputnik 5. They just announced that they're going to push back widespread distribution of it until after November. But, we would not have access, presumably, to these other vaccines because we're not participating with the World Health Organization in this. Meanwhile, Trump says that he's going to save us all money on pharmaceuticals. Yesterday, when he was in Kenosha, he told reporters, he said that the drug companies are coming to see me, quote, this week to broker a deal, quote, substantially reducing drug prices. So that's what he told the press. That's what was reported to the American people. So some of the reporters who were there reached out to PhRMA, the trade association for the pharmaceutical industry, and said, you guys going to the White House this week? And Nicole Longo, spokeswoman for PhRMA, for Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers Association of America, said, quote, we are not aware of any meeting. We know nothing about this. Trump keeps insisting that he issued an executive order that's lowering drug prices, but it's never been issued. Nobody's ever seen it. The drug companies are shrugging their shoulders and continuing to jack up prices. It looks like Trump just thinks that if he just lies about things, if he just says them, that people will take them as true. And sadly, that is probably an accurate assessment for his base, for his followers, the people who believe that he's they're basically their savior. The rest of us, not so much. We've kind of figured out this guy's been a con man literally his whole entire life, and he's conning America right now. We'll be back with your calls.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Right after this short break. Stick around. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Tribalization of Politics, How Rush Limbaugh's Race-Baiting Rhetoric on the Obama Presidency Paved the Way for Trump, by Ian Refowitz, or Refowitz. Donald Trump owns, this is from the first chapter, Donald Trump owns conservative media 100% lock, stock, and barrel. Full of bluster and bombast, Trump uses modern media tools like Twitter to directly blast the nation with his unfiltered, uninformed, and uncivil messages at full volume. To those outside the conservative media bubble, it may seem as though Trump is the entire ballgame. Sure, Fox News is a presence, but the news channel has reconstituted itself these days as state media, singular in purpose, to prop up Trump's candidacy. Whatever the, quote, conservative message might be these days, it doesn't exist without Trump. It's Trump who sets the agenda. It is Trump who determines the message, and it is Trump who decides who best can sell it. 10 out of 10 times, it's Trump. Thus, in this world of Trump, 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 and more Trump, it is easy for the uninitiated to forget that in addition to the president's Twitter account, conservatives have built a massive media machine to promote a message that is often at odds with reality and the American mainstream. Forged in the aftermath of Barry Goldwater's 1964 landslide loss, this massive network of conservative TV, radio, print, and online outlets have allowed them to build an alternative reality so powerful and convincing that entire swaths of the country are held in thrall. A Pew study in 2017 found that 40% of Trump voters relied on Fox News as their main source of news. Meanwhile, only 3% of Hillary Clinton voters relied on any cable news channel as their primary source of information. Conservative websites like the Daily Caller and Breitbart reach millions. Social media like Facebook and Twitter is awash in conservative voices, further amplified by Russian bots. And the dark web has given voice to the darkest fringes of the conservative world, from white supremacists to conspiracy theorists like the QAnon crew, convinced of a deep state conspiracy against Trump fueled by child sex traffickers like Hillary Clinton. But nothing reaches more conservative voices than AM radio. Once the province of music stations, the emergence of FM radio led to a mass migration to the higher quality band that left AM radio in severe decline. Talk radio didn't require that same level of quality audio, and station operators embraced the format. The elimination of the Fairness Doctrine in 1987 made it possible for conservatives to take over the dial without concern that political balance was required. And in 1988, a certain Rush Limbaugh launched his nationally syndicated show. It's hard to overstate just how dramatically important Limbaugh has been in defining conservative thought and ideology, with an audience that has at times reached into the tens of millions. No single conservative personality outside of modern-day Trump has had this kind of reach or influence. And unlike Fox News, which actively makes conservatives stupid, Limbaugh's method of misinformation has always been rooted in a more solid foundation of truthiness. A 2007 survey by Pew Research found that Limbaugh listeners demonstrated among the highest knowledge levels in response to a battery of political current affairs questions, with 79% having either a high or moderate level. Among Fox News viewers, the number was only 65%, second to last, with nightly news watchers faring worse. Here's a funny aside. The most informed were watchers of Comedy Central's Daily Show and Colbert Report, also at 79% combined, but with a larger number of high levels of knowledge. But knowing the names of the Vice President, Governor, and Speaker of the House is only base-level knowledge. Limbaugh may accurately impart such information, but as this book shows, his pernicious twisting of facts, out-of-context quotes, and toxic editorializing have done far worse damage to our country than whether someone knows or doesn't know the name of the Supreme Court, of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. If you are anything like me, the sheer amount of misinformation stated by Rush Limbaugh in the pages ahead will shock and anger you deeply. Not just about how Limbaugh twisted the truth. As Ian notes early on, Limbaugh launched his coverage of the Obama presidency with four simple words: I hope he fails. With that goal in mind, nothing would stop Limbaugh from spending the next years reinforcing the narrative of failure. The truth never stood a chance. What makes this so infuriating is that Limbaugh decided that lies and policy differences weren't enough to make Obama a failure. Instead, he had to other him, turning white America against him. And he did that with pure, unfiltered, unadulterated racism. I was shocked when Ian first told me about this project. He's literally going to go through 8 years of Rush Limbaugh transcripts. I was shocked again when he told me he was finished. He actually read 8 years of Rush Limbaugh transcripts. But that was nothing like the jolt from seeing the result of that thankless labor. His comprehensive transcribing of Limbaugh's hate, always in full context. What these pages show are the words of a white supremacist. And you'll find yourself, like me, wondering how the hell he has gotten away with talking like a KKK Grand Dragon in modern-day America. There's nothing subtle about what you're about to read. For example, when Barack Obama talked about the disparities in policing between white and black Americans, as objective and uncontroversial an observation as possible, Limbaugh happily ranted about the president carrying out, quote, a purposeful effort here to divide people in this country along racial lines, end quote. Pointing out racism to conservatives is always worse than the actual racism itself. The book, The Tribalization of Politics by Ian Refowitz.
Tons a minute. He'll explain what that means to us. Dr. Michael Greger drops by, and one of the most important questions right now: what can be done to stop the spread of animal-derived diseases? And director Dan Partland is here on his new film, Unfit: The Psychology of Donald Trump. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are available. Hi, Thom Hartmann here. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, I'll be taking you from the birth of America as a revolt against monopoly, remember the Boston Tea Party, to the largely successful efforts of both Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and other like-minded leaders to constrain corporations' monopolistic urges, to the massive changes in the rules of business starting during the Reagan Revolution that have brought us into the cancer stage of capitalism. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, "This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation." End quote. It's the fourth in my Hidden History series, available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag, you're it. So the first COVID-19 deaths linked to the Sturgis motorcycle rally was reported in Minnesota. The Washington Post writing about this. A Minnesota biker who attended the Sturgis motorcycle rally has died of COVID-19, the first fatality of the virus to be traced to the 10-day event. His case is among at least 260 cases in 11 states tied directly to that Sturgis motorcycle rally, according to a survey of health departments by the Washington Post. Epidemiologists believe that figure is a significant undercount because the rally goers are, not enthusiastic about being tested and won't go along with contact tracing. So therefore, the true scope of the infection stemming from this might never be known. It's just pretty remarkable stuff. And Trump's lie at this Kenosha camera shop. This is really breathtaking. Laura Clausen writing about this for the Daily Kos. Donald Trump she writes, can't even visit a burned down business without lying about it. When the owner of Rhodes Camera Shop refused to be part of Trump's tour of Kenosha, Wisconsin, Trump didn't take the business off the tour. He just went with an alternative owner. Seriously. The actual owner, Tom Graham, bought this store 8 years ago after working there for decades. So he's been working there for 20 years plus, and he bought the store 8 years ago, but he didn't want to go along with Trump's little dog and pony show. So Trump reaches out and gets John Rode III, the former owner of the camera shop and the owner of the property on which it stands, and introduced him as the owner of the business, and the guy didn't correct him. Amazing. There's like nothing this guy can't lie about. It's just breathtaking. Anyhow, let's pick up your phone calls here. Marilyn in Sun City, West Arizona. Hey, Marilyn, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I'm always nervous talking to you, but I wish I could bottle you and put you on every front porch in my neighborhood. Just on the Kenosha thing, I'm just going to say that it's my understanding that anytime you shoot someone while in the commission of a felony, it's automatically murder, whether you intended it or not, but I'm not a lawyer. But what I really called about is a little bit of good news, because I am in a deep sea of red here, and I feel so alone. And for this election, more than any other election we've had in the last 10 or 12 years, I am seeing, to my great surprise, more Biden signs on lawns than I saw either Hillary signs, which I only remember seeing one, or Obama signs. And there aren't as many as there are Trump signs, but the Trump signs have not increased. But I am amazed that there are that many people that actually have Biden-Harris signs out. I'm greatly encouraged by that.
Well, that's great. That's great, Marilyn. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that that's what's going on there in Arizona. Thank you for the call. Ralph in Knoxville, Tennessee. Hey, Ralph, what's up?
Hello, Professor Tom. How you doing today?
I'm well. What's up?
Not a whole lot. I wish you had told me about that. All the people dying from different ages, because I'm 74. But anyway,
yeah, so stay safe, Ralph. Stay safe.
I got a question. Yeah, I do. I'm a crossing guard here, but I'm out in the open. I'm out in the street, away from the kids, so I don't have to worry too much about it. But anyway, I got this scenario I'd like to run by you. Maybe you can answer the question. I don't guess anybody really knows until it happens. What if Donald Trump, what if we're lucky and Joe wins, but and Donald Trump won't concede? How do you legally get the orange blob out of there?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that just automatically happens, Ralph. At noon on January 20th, the nuclear codes expire. At noon on January 20th, his Secret Service detail changes. It'd be different people in a different way of functioning. I don't think he can stop that process. The challenge is going to be whether the Supreme Court intervenes. Or whether he invokes the 12th Amendment, or he can get enough states to go along in a way that might cause the 12th Amendment to be invoked. In other words, if there's some, scheme or scam that he can run, because, it's increasingly looking like a lot of people are going to be showing up to vote. Although I'm very concerned, the more racial hatred that he can stir up, and the more fear that he can stir up of, oh my God, it's Antifa, oh my God, it's Black Lives Matter. The more that he can do that, and that Fox News can do that, the more his base is going to show up as well. And frankly, there are people who are being, radicalized, kind of in the center, who are freaking out. They're watching Fox News or they're listening to Trump, and they're concerned about it. So, we just all need to make sure, double, triple, quadruple check that we are registered to vote and that our registration is current. And if you can easily get a by mail ballot and you can turn it in fast, go for it. And if not, be very, very careful, but be sure to vote. Ralph, thank you for the call. Alan in Glenview, Illinois. Hey, Alan, what's up?
Tom, I listen to your show for just several years here, and you'll hear occasional callers, one-issue voters, call up and say, hey, the Democrats are trying to take your guns away. My reply to them is what's going on currently. I think the Democrats' bipartisan support just introduced the MORE Act, which would remove marijuana from a Schedule I substance and would obviously release people in prison for marijuana. But the key issue is I have a cannabis card, and I was just told that I am unable to buy firearms because I'm, quote, a drug addict. I'm not a drug addict, but the mere fact that I have a medical cannabis card, they say that I am a drug addict. I cannot buy a gun. I've just given up my cannabis card, and for 1 year after giving up the card, I still cannot buy a firearm. So this bill, which has bipartisan support, was just sent. I think the House is just sending it along, and Mitch McConnell, of course, has said that he will not even, they won't even hear it in the Senate. So if these callers call up, my thoughts are just say, what about the Republicans and Mitch McConnell specifically not even wanting to hear this bill, which would then allow tens of thousands of Americans who have cannabis cards the right to buy firearms again?
Yeah.
So that's my point.
It's an interesting bit of logical jujitsu, Alan. And thanks for sharing that story with us. Alexander in Playa del Rey, California. Hey, Alexander, what's up?
Yeah, I just wanted to get your take on people like Chris Hedges and Nina Turner coming out for the People's Party convention, condemning Bernie Sanders for being part of Joe Biden's platform. And
Yeah, I'm not with them on that, as I'm guessing you can figure out. I think it's a big mistake. Mo in West Palm Beach, Florida. Hey, Mo, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I just want to ask, what are your thoughts, and why do you think so many voters are now attracted to the Republican Party and the Trump vote? Early on, during the conventions, Joe Biden had a lot of hope going into the election. Now it's so much closer. Why do you think that is?
Never underestimate the power of fear, Mo. Fear was what Richard Nixon used in 1968. Fear among white people of black people, basically. And that's how Donald Trump started his campaign back in 2015. be afraid of brown people coming from Mexico. They're going to rape your wife. They're going to kill you. They're, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to take your job, et cetera. The Republican Party has basically been selling fear ever since the Southern Democrats stopped selling fear in 1965 because they couldn't do it anymore because their party had just, pushed through the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. So the Republican Party, as Richard Nixon famously, said and did in the 1968 election, picked up those white racist votes. And so you've got, people who are openly racist and people who are just, racist light. They're frightened. And, it's the other scares them. And you can expect to see Trump, Fox News, right-wing hate radio, and frankly, the paid callers into this program from the Republican side really pounding on this fear thing. Oh, my God, the cities are burning. No, our cities are not burning. Oh, my God, people are being killed. Well, not so much. Oh, my God, black people are, fill in the blanks. I mean, this is where they're going to go.
Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And it's going to get more and more intense, and the ads coming out of the Republican side against the Democrats are going to get darker and darker, both metaphorically and literally. We'll be right back. And welcome back, Mark in Encinitas, California. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Yeah, Tom, I read a pretty disturbing article this morning in the New York Times. It's titled, "This is Democrats' Doomsday Scenario for Election Night." It's by Trip Gabriel. Anyway, the part that I'm really concerned about is further down in the article, it says, as of now, mail-in votes from large Democratic cities like Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Detroit are not reported until after in-person votes, sometimes days later. The concern here is...
This was the scenario that I raised with Congressman Pocan in the first hour of the program, Mark. I said, what do we do if they count the in-person votes first? And you can bet in states where you've got a Republican Secretary of State, that's probably what's going to happen. And, post those results, and it looks like Donald Trump is ahead, and Trump declares victory. And then as the mail-in votes come in, 20% of Trump voters are voting by mail, 50% of Biden voters are voting by mail. As the mail-in votes come in, it becomes obvious that Biden won the election, but Trump and his message and the Fox News right-wing hate radio message is going to be, oh, my God, look at this. They're trying to steal the election right in front of us. And I fully expect that to happen, Mark. And the solution is things like that article. It's educating the American public that we are not going to know on the night of November 3rd who won the election, like we have historically. We're just not going to know. We're probably not going to know, with a high level of certainty until at least the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th of November. And the media needs to begin preparing people for that. We all need to be talking about that and pointing it out and making it, just very, very clear that this is what's happening. Mark, thanks for the call. Dennis in Tacoma. Hey, Dennis, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I just got a quick question. Why is Trump pushing so hard to vote by machine and not by mail?
I believe that it came out of the early surveys, and this goes all the way back to May and June, that found that people who consume Fox News and right-wing hate radio generally don't think that this virus is a risk to them or a danger to them. Whereas people whose principal news sources are CNN or MSNBC or the big networks tend to believe that the coronavirus is deadly and is a danger to them. And as a result of that, people who consume their news through Fox News and right-wing hate radio are more likely to think that voting in person is not a big deal. That's why only 20% of Trump voters report that they're going to vote by mail. Whereas people who consume their news from, mainstream sources realize how dangerous this virus is, and about half of them are going to vote by mail. And so when Trump saw those statistics, or when his campaign and his strategists saw those statistics, they said, okay, the Biden vote is going to be a by mail vote. And if we're going to claim that the election was stolen, we have to figure out a way claiming that vote is illegitimate or, delegitimizing that vote. That's what's going on, Dennis. It's very simple.
Then it's not that Ivanka bought them voting machines in China. Then
no, those are not in use. That was just a trademark. So as far as we know, anyway, there's an Ivanka brand of voting machines, but I don't think they've been deployed in the United States. Maybe they're using them in Saudi Arabia. I don't know. Dennis, thank you for the call. But this just goes back. I mean, there were stories about this months ago, about the Republican Party gaming this thing out and figuring out that their voters were more likely to vote in person, less likely to vote by mail. We'll be right back. The hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment tells how the Second Amendment was written to protect Georgia's slave patrols. Hi, Thom Hartmann here. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, I'll be taking you from the birth of America as a revolt against monopoly, remember the Boston Tea Party, to the largely successful efforts of both Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and other like-minded leaders to constrain corporations' monopolistic urges, to the massive changes in the rules of business starting during the Reagan Revolution that have brought us into the cancer stage of capitalism. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, "This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation." End quote. It's the fourth in my Hidden History series, available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag, you're it. And welcome back. Alexander in Playa del Rey. Hey, Alexander, what's up?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I just wanted to get your opinion on this new movement. It's called the People's Party Convention. Have you heard of them?
Yeah, somebody called earlier on this thing, and it's I have no use for this, frankly. This is an attempt at a third party thing, and all it will do is increase the probability of Donald Trump winning the White House, and I think it's a huge mistake, and frankly, I condemn it. Debbie in Sun City, Arizona. Hey, Debbie, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on Nancy Pelosi saying that she doesn't feel Joe Biden should debate Donald Trump?
I understand where she's coming from. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that, Trump is, he lies. He lies easily and constantly. And it's a real question. If you're going to debate somebody who's a liar, how do you do that? I mean, they say something that's completely untrue. You say, that's not true. They say, yes, it is. And there's no arbiter, right? And especially if it sounds true. I mean, Trump's really the master of lies that are based on kernels of truth. Those are the most effective lies are the ones where people know a little bit of it already to be true. And so they think the whole thing must be true. And, I would expect that from Trump. I would, I'm really torn on this one. Personally, if it was me running against Donald Trump, I would say, I'm not going to debate this guy until he proves that he's a legitimate candidate, until he can go 1 week without telling a lie, and he releases his tax returns. When he's done those two things, I'll debate him. That's what I would say. But, it's up to Joe Biden. And I realize if he doesn't debate him, Trump will make the most of that, and that will probably hurt him more than help him. So it's one of those, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Tom in Durham, North Carolina. Hey, Tom, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking the call. You were talking about the counting of in-person versus mail-in ballots and the differential there. And my thought was how's the media, especially the networks, going to handle election night coverage with the votes coming in? Are they going to pull their usual sort of sports night, rush to judgment, trying to be the first one to call an election? Or are they going to actually be reasonable about saying, hey, there's only a tiny percent of the vote in, and all the absentee or mail-in votes haven't been counted, and how's that going to play in with Trump's narrative of trying to claim victory if things go like we fear.
Excuse me, Tom. We don't know. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows right now how this is going to be played out. Some of that, excuse me, is going to be played out in the boardrooms of some of these networks. But I would think, and again, this is just trying to be logical about this, which is not always it's not always what gives you the correct answer. But I would think that by now the networks would have figured out that Donald Trump is not a fan of freedom of the press. That if Donald Trump is unleashed, he's been impeached and he got past it. He's been charged with every kind of crime you can imagine. He's got past it. He succeeded in stopping Robert Mueller from investigating his links to Russia. He has succeeded in stopping the Intelligence Committee from investigating his links into Russia. There's literally never been a federal investigation. He blocked the FBI from looking into this. I mean, all the things that Donald Trump has gotten away with that are just breathtaking. And, you would think that the media would be concerned that in another term where he's no longer at all concerned about the rule of law, and he still has Bill Barr to back him up, that some of these media organizations are going to start seeing their executives and their reporters going to prison, or start seeing their access to the people diminished. And I would be very flipped out about that if I was a media executive. But to what extent that's going to influence their coverage, I don't know, but it's going to be real interesting to watch. Tom, I'm sorry, Tom. We've got a slight delay here, and I moved on to the next caller, but you were still talking. My apologies. Christine in Ashland, Oregon. Hey, Christine, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I was speaking with my stockbroker the other day, and he's a lovely gentleman, intelligent, educated person, has been a family friend for decades. And we talk about many things, and during our conversation, he started saying QAnon rhetoric about George Soros supplying bricks to demonstrators and all of that. And, of course, I don't believe any of that. But nonetheless, he seems to think that Trump will win because of the Electoral College. Now, I've been really optimistic, cautiously optimistic about this vote coming up. But what can we do is there anything we can do about the Electoral College, and how will that work?
Yeah, no, there's nothing that we can do about the Electoral College itself this time around, but it should be at the top of the agenda after the election if our democracy survives. If Donald Trump is reelected, our democracy won't survive, and the Electoral College will become, just another cog in the Donald Trump fascism machine. And I would be looking for a new stockbroker, Christine, if I were you. Thanks a lot for the call. Wow. We'll be back. Stick around. It's the Thom Hartmann Program coming back. The U.S. Postal Service, a story from on the ground. And Bill Barr has got a new order with who can talk about what's going on with Russia. It's very strange.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are Omaha Steaks, gourmet you can trust. More information at omahasteaks.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro, phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. Plexiderm Wrinkle Reducer, real science, real results. More info at plexiderm.com, code TOM. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. And TEEF, TEEF, Smarter Pet Dental Health. For more information, teef.com, code TOM.
Today we're reading from David Enrich's book, Dark Towers, Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump, and an Epic Trail of Destruction. This is from Chapter 10. It's titled The Mar-a-Lago Prize. In 1905, a German immigrant living in the Bronx set up a small barber shop on the ground floor of a newly constructed building at 60 Wall Street, in the heart of Manhattan's booming financial district. In an era before skyscrapers, the 25-story L-shaped tower was a landmark, its gargoyle-guarded roof visible from the nearby waterfront. The barbershop thrived, offering shaves and trims to a procession of bankers, stock exchange traders, lawyers, and office workers. The barber's name was Frederick Trump. The same year that he opened the shop, his wife gave birth to a boy named Fred. Many years passed, and the barbershop closed, and the old 60 Wall Street gave way in 1989 to a new 60 Wall Street, a 47-story tower topped with a distinctive pyramid roof. For a time, it was home to J.P. Morgan and Company. Then the bank left, and in 2005, Deutsche Bank started relocating its American staff, displaced ever since 9/11, to its new home at 60 Wall Street. And so Frederick Trump's grandson, born to Fred's wife in 1946, became an occasional visitor to the site of his grandfather's old barber shop. Deutsche's relationship with Donald Trump had only deepened since Mike Offit left. Justice Justin Kennedy, this is the son of Justice Anthony Kennedy, Justin Kennedy, now a managing director, had become a key point contact for Trump and helped chaperone large real estate deals for him through the bank. Kennedy's role was to find customers to buy portions of loans after Deutsche dispensed the money, a process that allowed Deutsche Bank to make larger loans than it otherwise could have. Kennedy sometimes sat with Trump in his luxury box at the U.S. Open tennis tournament or at Manhattan nightclubs, where Trump would park himself at a table in the corner facing outward, holding court like a mafia don. Now, with Kennedy's encouragement, Deutsche hurried along a Henry Villard-like path. In 2000, the bank had plunked down another $150 million to be used for the renovations of Trump's building at 40 Wall Street. The next year, Deutsche agreed to extend Trump a mortgage worth more than $900 million, at the time the largest ever on a single property, so he could buy the General Motors building on the southeastern corner of New York's Central Park. Trump already owned half of the 50-story building. He wanted the rest. And in 2002, Deutsche agreed to refinance about $70 million that he owed on some of his Atlantic City casinos. Those loans came out of Deutsche's commercial real estate division, which Kennedy was helping to run. Not everyone was enamored with Trump. Seth Waugh, W-A-U-G-H, one of Edson's many Merrill Lynch recruits and the head of Deutsche's American operations, learned around 2001 that the bank was planning to lend Trump about $500 million to use as he wished, basically an unrestricted cash infusion to stabilize the developer's flagging finances. Waugh had previously witnessed up close the carnage that Trump could inflict on imprudent financial institutions. At Merrill, Edison had assigned him the task of mopping up after Trump defaulted on nearly $700 million of bonds that Merrill had helped sell for his Taj Mahal casino in Atlantic City. Waugh was in no hurry to repeat the experience at Deutsche. He voiced strong objections to the proposed new loan to Trump, in which Trump would not have had to put up any hard assets as collateral, and the deal soon died. Yet Deutsche's broader Trump relationship rumbled on. In 2003, another arm of Deutsche, focused on helping companies raise money by selling stocks and bonds to investors, agreed to work with Trump. The point man on this part of the relationship was Richard Byrne, another Merrill veteran who had been involved in the Taj Mahal debacle. Byrne had helped sell the ill-fated Taj bonds to investors. Now Trump hired Byrne's group at Deutsche to issue bonds for his troubled Trump Hotel and casino resorts. Byrne knew this would be an uphill battle. Not only had Trump defaulted in the past, but he also had recently been taunting investors that he might stop paying back other outstanding bonds. Waugh didn't warn Byrne about the recently rejected $500 million loan, and so Byrne organized a roadshow for Trump to meet with and try to win over big institutional investors. He escorted Trump to meetings all over New York and Boston. At every stop, boardrooms and auditoriums were jammed with traders, fund managers, senior executives, and secretaries curious to see the Donald show, and Trump didn't disappoint. He rocked, he rolled, and he delivered wildly optimistic and inconsistent financial projections. Afterward, Trump called Byrne to ask how much money they'd raised. The answer, alas, was virtually zero. Byrne braced for an explosion as he explained to Trump that though he'd been treated like a celebrity, nobody trusted him with their money. Trump took the rejection in stride. "Let me talk to your salespeople," he requested. Byrne agreed, and Trump came to deliver a pep talk. "Fellas, I know this isn't the easiest thing you've all had to sell," he acknowledged, "but if you get this done, you'll all be my guests at Mar-a-Lago." Trump was always good at pushing an audience's buttons. A weekend with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, bragging rights that not even money could buy. And this new incentive did the trick. The salesman worked the phones, cast a wider net for more clients, and managed to sell an impressive $485 million of junk bonds, albeit at a high interest rate that reflected investors' fears that Trump might default. The book Dark Towers by David Enrich.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So remember back in the summer in August of 2001, when George W. Bush, the CIA, flew a guy down to Crawford, Texas, to hand him a memo in person that said bin Laden determined to strike inside the U.S. Well, apparently we've got a modern version of that now. There was a memo that was put together. This is according to ABC News. A bulletin was created by security officials at the Department of Homeland Security in early July. It contained warnings that Russia was going to carry out operations to promote, quote, this is from the intelligence community, quote, allegations about the poor mental health of Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. The draft report by the analysts had, quote, high confidence that Russian maligned influence actors would attack Biden with claims of poor mental health, quote, to influence the outcome of the 2020 election. Now, that analysis, this was in July 9th. And that analysis was supposed to go out to the states and basically to the American public as well, I believe, but specifically to the states. And 2 days before it was released, the DHS Chief of Staff John Gautanis blocked the release with a note asking that the bulletin be held until it could be discussed with Chad Wolf, the guy who claims to be the head of Department of Homeland Security, but according to the law and according to the Inspector General is not. His title is acting director, but the law says after 60 days, you can't be an acting director. So he has actually no legal status, although he's still there running DHS. And here we are 2 months later, and this memo has still not been released. So somebody at DHS is like, hey, we tried to warn you that this Russian disinformation is coming. And frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if there's disinformation coming from other countries as well, directed against Biden. Like, as I said, as I pointed out, Seth Abramson pointing out that, Saudi Arabia got in on this game, the United Arab Emirates, good buddies with Jared Kushner. The folks who gave Kushner $1 billion, they got in on this game. And then we've got Bill Barr. Bill Barr just ordered that all electronic surveillance, in other words, wiretaps, checking somebody's computer activity, listening on their phone calls and all that kind of thing, that has to do with foreign intelligence operating in the United States or operating in collaboration with any American politician or political party, that all of that cannot be investigated by the FBI or any other intelligence agency that the Justice Department has oversight over without Bill Barr personally signing off on it. At the same time, Trump just issued a new ruling, as it were, instituted a new policy that Congress itself, which is supposed to provide oversight of the intelligence agencies and frankly, of the executive branch, that Congress will no longer be briefed in person by intelligence analysts so that members of Congress can no longer ask questions. It turns out the Barr has been blocking investigations and prosecutions of Trump allies. He's been removing watchdogs in various government agencies, particularly around the Justice Department. He's been removing oversight officials. And frankly, he and Trump have been pushing this anti-Biden material to Republican senators like Ron Johnson that's coming straight out of Russia. I mean, this is mind-boggling. I don't think Vladimir Putin would tolerate this. Meanwhile, Charles McMillan Jr. and his son and a childhood friend, Kendrick Clemens, were dropping off a U-Haul truck. And this is in Tallahassee, Florida. And the next thing they knew, they're literally just, they had used this U-Haul truck and they were dropping it off. And the next thing, this was at a shopping center. And the next thing they knew, they had bullets flying over their heads. The two shooters, Wallace and Beverly Fountain, a couple of white people, saw these three black people, Charles McMillan Jr. and his son and his son's friend Kendrick Clemens, who had rented this truck. They were returning it and dropping it off. This white couple saw them. They were not armed. They were dropping off a U-Haul, and this white couple got their guns and literally started shooting. The Fountains have been arrested and charged with 3 counts of aggravated assault with intent to murder. How corrupt is he? Well, the IRS chief that Donald Trump installed, Charles Rettig, has refused to release Donald Trump's tax returns. He's also not been releasing his own information. Back when he filled out his financial disclosure forms, he said, well, yeah, I'm making $200,000 a year from a rental property in Hawaii. What he neglected to mention was that he owns 2 Trump condos in Hawaii, and he's renting those out. So he's making $200,000 a year at Trump International Waikiki, the guy who runs the Internal Revenue Service, the guy who is saying, no, I'm not going to give you Donald Trump's tax returns. Even to Richie Neal, the head of the Ways and Means Committee, where the law specifically says that the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, and this is a law that was passed after Nixon, specifically to deal with people like Nixon. Nixon was the last president who refused to release his taxes. And of course, it was because Nixon was taking bribes. And here we are, all over again. Meanwhile, Gallup has been polling Americans asking, are you worried about layoffs? And are you worried about having your hours cut? Well, last year, 15% of Americans had those worries, which is probably a baseline, right? I mean, that's probably about what you would expect. There's a lot of jobs that are kind of marginal jobs, and there's a lot of folks who kind of know that, I'm kind of a square peg in a round hole here. I don't know, or they don't care that much about their jobs. So, it makes sense that 15% of people would say, yeah, there's a chance I'll get laid off or I'll have my hours cut. But now, it's 27%. This from this survey that was just done by Gallup. 27% are concerned about being laid off, and 28%, are worried that their hours will be cut. 28% also worry that their wages will be cut. Why? Well, there's millions of unemployed people. At its peak, when we locked down back in March, we had 22.5 million people who were officially unemployed as a result of the COVID virus. And about 8 million of those people have gone back to work, although that number looks like it's dropping again. But about 8 million went back to work, which means that, you got 12, 13 million who are still unemployed. And those 12 or 13 million are in the job market. They're looking for jobs. They're willing to work cheap. Hey, anything will help. People saying, I might have a master's degree in computer science, but, I'll take a janitor job. Just give me something to do. Give me some income. Especially if you can toss some health insurance in there. And this, of course, tells us we've got a raging pandemic. We've got an economy in the toilet. We've got, over 10 million people desperately looking for work. You've got 20 or 30 million people on the edge of eviction right now, depending on whose numbers you're using. Which all explains why Donald Trump is screaming about violence in the streets and trying to provoke violence in the streets. Because, hey, change the subject is his middle name. We'll be back with your calls and thoughts right after this. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Oh, by the way, did I tell you Trump Jr. and Kimberly Guilfoyle, who's being paid $180,000 a year for shilling for Trump, they went to Paris. It cost you and me $64,000. And welcome back. Joe in Cupertino, California. Hey, Joe, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Cheer up. It's 63 days to wake up. That's terrible.
Yeah.
I appreciate.
Actually, it'll probably be more like, it's going to be more like 100 days because I'm not going to feel safe until January 21st.
Okay. It takes 30 days to certify anyway, or at least it used to. My thing is I was going to report to you. I know you probably are aware of the stresses of healthcare professionals in the public health arena today because of the COVID virus, and the shutdown has really affected our community here where I live. And she's been getting threats from some people in our community. The public health director, Dr. Sarah
Who's
Cody,
been getting threats?
The public health director, Sarah Cody's been getting death threats for about 4 months. And it turns out they made an arrest, I guess, here in town a couple of days ago. It turns out this is a college mathematics professor who's been writing letters to her with boogaloo influences. And the sheriff's department had a big press conference. But, I mean, you got upset the other day and you apologized because somebody made you mad. And I called in today because that really upset me that she's been doing such a wonderful job trying to keep the infection rate down here. We're at less than 4%. I live in a community that has less than 100 cases per 100,000. But to send death threats to her, and then this gentleman apparently has been implicated in sending bad letters to the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's officer who was killed. His wife is threatened. So, it's just everybody's kind of at their wits' ends. But I wanted to be positive and say that there's 63 days until the election. I've heard from the mayor in San Francisco that high school kids might even be able to go back to school come November. So I want to be positive and start to look at this as opposed to letting Trump dictate the terms and conditions of the election. Let's just look forward because it's not a matter of what he says anymore. It's about we getting out and voting.
Yeah, I am with you, and I'm optimistic. I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the polling. And I'm just like boggled. Here's a guy who is a shill for foreign operations, is an international criminal. A mobster, is encouraging death and destruction, is promoting racism. I'm boggled that even 40% of Americans are seriously considering voting for him. I mean, that shocks me about my country.
Well, I agree with you. I'm shocked.
All that said, go ahead, Joe.
Well, I'm shocked as well, but I think that those are false numbers. I'm hoping, as I heard somebody comment on your show, that Biden's probably going to win by 60% of the vote. You know what? This prescription that we
there are no polls that show that, Joe.
No, I know.
There are no polls that show that. Yeah. No, we have to. We are going to. Go ahead.
I hate to say this, but I don't know if we'd be having the same situation with turnout if we had another candidate, but we aren't going to mention anybody's name.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Joe. No, I think the bottom line, and I think that Joe Biden is actually, turning out to be a pretty good candidate, and I'm very encouraged by Kamala Harris being on the ticket with him. And, I think that there's a chance that it's going to be a blowout, but there's a chance that it can be stolen. And, once burned, twice shy, right? We thought we were going to see the first woman president in the history of the United States back in 2016. And a lot of us, myself included, were, pretty smug about that. I was getting a little worried there in the week or two leading up to the election, but by and large, I was with everybody else thinking, oh yeah, we got this thing in the bag. And little did we know. We'll be back. It's 20 minutes past the hour. Daily rants and weekly op-eds at HartmannReport.com. It's free and there's no ads. HartmannReport.com. Hi, Thom Hartmann here. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, I'll be taking you from the birth of America as a revolt against monopoly, remember the Boston Tea Party, to the largely successful efforts of both Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and other like-minded leaders to constrain corporations' monopolistic urges, to the massive changes in the rules of business starting during the Reagan Revolution that have brought us into the cancer stage of capitalism. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, "This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation." End quote. It's the fourth in my Hidden History series, available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag, you're it. One minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Rich in Cedro Woolley, Washington. Hey, Rich, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, this whole subtext to the fear in the Trump campaign is actually an economic fear, fear of loss of your home, loss of your job, loss of your wages. And as long as we link this fear to coronavirus, Trump can always come back and say, oh, well, once we have the vaccine, Trumponomics will explode again. But we have to, makes it all the more important for us to remind people that Trumponomics went off the cliff back in February before this all started. Because if we keep talking
in a big way, and as an earlier caller pointed out, it was back in 2019 in September and October when the Fed had to start bailing out the overnight repo market, the banks basically, which means that that's really when it began.
Yeah, I heard that. But as long as we keep harping on, Trump screwed up the coronavirus response, and that's why and that's related to the economy. All right, that's true. That really pushed it right off, into the abyss. But we just got to remind folks it started back in February. Earlier, that this Trumponomics is a failure, and when coronavirus is gone, the Trumponomic crash is still going to be with us.
Yeah.
And also, I hope Joe Biden note of what happened in Massachusetts here with the progressive vote.
What happened? I mean, the progressives basically, Ed Markey you're talking about the Markey-Kennedy race. Markey was generally perceived as being more progressive than Kennedy, and Markey won. How's that a bad thing?
Well, that's a good thing, but I hope Joe Biden takes note of that and says, okay, maybe I better start moving a little more towards the progressive side. And
I agree, and I think I could probably fairly predict that they are paying attention to that. That was a thunderclap, and it's a big deal. So I think I'm okay with it. Rich, thanks for the call. Ernest in Durham, North Carolina. Hey, Ernest, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. I'm a truck driver, and I drive up and down the East Coast as far as the business. And every state that I've been in, I see Trump billboards on the highway. I see Trump signs in the yards. But I have yet to see one Joe Biden sign or billboard everywhere I've been. And if he's raised like $300 million, he needs to put some signs out, put some billboards out.
I agree. I'm guessing that a lot of that has to do with, Trump getting a jump on it because, Biden wasn't officially the nominee of the party until this month or this last month. And, it wasn't a certainty until a few months ago. And, Trump has known that he's going to be running for a year now. So maybe they were able to lock him up. I don't know. But, Ernest, thanks for the heads up on that. Hopefully, somebody who could do something about it is listening. MG in Lawton, Oklahoma. Hey, MG, what's up?
Tom, here in Oklahoma, like your last caller, I see a lot of people driving around, in their pickups and flags, Trump flags flying and all that kind of stuff. And I think we're too easy on these people. I think we ought to be calling them what they are, and hopefully a lot of people, especially I'm 70 years old, and especially my age or close to it, that we ought to be calling these people Trump Nazis, and because our country, my folks, my dad, my uncles, they fought in World War II, and the same stuff that was going on in Germany is going on over here right now.
Yeah, my father was an anti-fascist also. You know, he right out of high school volunteered for World War II. The war ended while he was in basic training, so he ended up, serving in Japan during the occupation forces. But, spot on, MG. I'm totally with you. Thank you for the call. Drew in Portland. Hey, Drew, what's up?
Hi, Tom. With so many progressives being successful in the primary, like Ed Markey last night, do you believe that it's possible for Bernie Sanders to be elected as the Speaker of the House, considering anyone can be named the Speaker of the House?
Yeah, I think it's possible, but I think it's the possibility is, like less than 1%. I mean, it's technically possible.
Breaking my heart.
But yeah, no, the Speaker of the House is elected by the majority of the members of the House of Representatives. And, typically that's the majority party, although there have been in history a couple of times when you had people from the other party, basically crossing over and affecting it. And you're right, anybody can be elected Speaker of the House. Although if it was not a member of the House who was elected Speaker of the House, I think the position would take on a very different character. But I just, it's going to be Nancy Pelosi. She's done a good job. She's gotten some fabulous legislation passed in the last 2 years. Mitch McConnell hasn't chosen to pick it up. But, I mean, they passed, the HEROES Act, a $3 trillion act that funds $600 a week going all the way until January, that does another rent moratorium that covers the costs of, upgrading our election infrastructure and making sure that, that funds the post office. I mean, a whole lot of really good and basic stuff, straightforward stuff that she has gotten passed. And that's just the beginning. I mean, they got a massive infrastructure bill passed that, would start fixing the potholes in our roads all over the country, that would build our infrastructure back together. Again, Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in the Senate said, no, we're not going to talk about that. Lindsey Graham, no, we're not going to talk about that. And Tom Tillis and et cetera, no, we're not going to talk about that. John Cornyn, no, not going to talk about that. Cory Gardner, no, not going to talk about that.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So from where I'm sitting, it looks to me like Nancy Pelosi's done a damn good job. And that's why they're going after her so aggressively right now, like, with this whole hairdresser thing.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Walking Your Blues Away, How to Heal the Mind and Create Emotional Well-Being. Chapter 6, page 62, How to Do a Walking Your Blues Away session. Friedrich Nietzsche offers the epigraph, the opening quote, all truly great thoughts are conceived while walking. There are 5 steps to correctly performing a Walking Your Blues Away session. They are define the issue, bring up the story, walk with the issue, notice how the issue changes, and anchor the new state. I'll go into detail on each of the steps. Before going for your walk, consider the issues that are still hanging around in your life that you feel are unresolved. This could range from past traumas, hurts, angers, or embarrassments to relationship issues with people you no longer have access to, including people who have died. Don't worry that an issue might be too complex or something that happened over a long time. Many issues are multidimensional. What happens is that when the core issue is resolved, it rapidly begins the process of unwinding or cleaning up the peripheral associated issues. Similarly, if you pick an issue that you may think is itself part of something larger, you'll notice after you worked with it that the large issue will also begin to resolve. There is no specific right or wrong issue to work with. If you can think of it, visualize it, and get a feeling from it, then you can walk and work with it. Bring up the story, step 1. Notice your story about the issue. Story in this context, or step 2 rather. Story in this context refers to such thought patterns as she was cruel toward me, or he had no right to hurt me like that, or why did she have to die? And I'd like to get this job, but I don't know what to do to make it happen. There's always an internal story with you and the object of the story at the center, and it's important to pull that story out so you can say and hear it explicitly. How would you describe the story to yourself in your most private and safe space if you had to boil it down to a few words or a sentence or two? Once you have that, you have one of the two tools to use in determining when your process has finished. Another important tool is to notice the strength of the emotional charge associated with this event. Using a scale of 0, truly don't care, to 100, the most intense you've ever felt, come up with a number to rank the emotional charge connected with this event. Not only will this number be useful in your work with the process, it'll also be an excellent tool for gaining historical perspective, as often after a memory is resolved, it's impossible to regain access to the original emotional charge because it's been resolved. We can forget very quickly how important a past event once seemed. Walking is pretty simple, but there are a few common sense rules. This is number 3, walk with the issue. Wear comfortable clothes and shoes. Don't bring along anything other than your ID so you're not distracted by a hanging purse or a carried book. You want to be able to walk easily and to swing your arms comfortably. That's to produce bilaterality. Pick a route that is at least a mile long and ideally 2 miles. At the average walking speed of 3 miles an hour, a mile is a 20-minute walk. For those who walk fast comfortably, a mile takes approximately 15 minutes. Make sure the route matches your level of health. Don't include hills or mountains if you had a heart condition, and your doctor would warn you against overexertion. On the other hand, there's no need to exclude climbs that you may get out of breath that may get you out of breath if you're in good health and want to use your walk also as aerobic exercise. It's not necessary to pick a rural, suburban, or urban route. Anywhere you walk, there will be things to distract you, from squirrels to the windows at Saks Fifth Avenue. The key is not in finding a distraction-free walking area. That's pretty much impossible. Rather, the key is to continue to remind yourself to hold your picture and or feeling in front of you while walking. Of course, nobody has perfect concentration. Most of us, in fact, are pretty attention compromised. After 20 or 30 seconds of walking, we find our attention zooming off in some other direction. That's no problem. Just keep reminding yourself to bring your attention back to the issue or goal, and again, bring up the picture. The mind has a tremendous ability to pick up where it left off and continue processing things. In reality, the total amount of concentrated time it takes your bilateral motion to resolve your issue or goal is probably just a matter of a few minutes, between 5 and 10 minutes in my experience. But to aggregate those few minutes, most people have to walk for a half hour or so, continuously reminding themselves to be present with the picture and feeling until all of the remembering to do it moments add up to those 5 to 10 total minutes. One of the important keys to this practice is to relax into it. It may take a few walks to get used to this manner of walking and not thinking, just like it took you a few tries to learn to ride a bicycle. To motivate yourself, though, think of the positive resolution that you're trying to achieve rather than engaging in any sort of internal dialogue that chastises you for past actions. We're all wired to learn through trial and error. Learning how to quickly and easily do a walk your blues away session usually takes a few tries. Remember, there is no failure. There's only feedback. Learn from the feedback and continue on. Notice how the issue changes. Number 4. The submodalities, the primarily visual and auditory characteristics of a memory picture, such as how bright a memory picture is or where it's located, how clear it seems, whether it's in color or black and white, whether or not there's sound, whether it looks like a movie clip or a still picture, whether we see ourselves in the picture or see it as if we were watching from the outside. These are the filing system tags for the emotional brain. As the emotional value or the emotion attached to the picture memory changes, the submodalities will change. When people walk with an unpleasant memory, it's not uncommon for them to say that they see it beginning to disintegrate or get dimmer or lose its color or move farther away or even behind them. The dimming usually begins in a corner or in one part of the picture. As if it was an old photograph with a lit match underneath it, part of the picture begins to distort and darken, and then it changes. Walking your blues away. And one of the most important questions right now, what can be done to stop the spread of animal-derived diseases? And director Dan Partland is here on his new film, Unfit, The Psychology of Donald Trump. Tune into the science revolution wherever fine podcasts are available. So, Hi, Thom Hartmann here. In my new book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, I'll be taking you from the birth of America as a revolt against monopoly, remember the Boston Tea Party, to the largely successful efforts of both Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and other like-minded leaders to constrain corporations' monopolistic urges, to the massive changes in the rules of business starting during the Reagan Revolution that have brought us into the cancer stage of capitalism. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, "This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation." End quote. It's the fourth in my Hidden History series, available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag, you're it. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And boy, I'm constantly saying that, aren't I? And what an amazing day. It's just that it's like, I've been doing this show 17 years, and I've never seen anything like this. This is amazing. Alan, Cedar City, Utah. Hey, Alan, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to say that when the primaries ended, my sense was that, I was disappointed. I mean, Joe Biden was way too much an establishment centrist type for me. But I've got to say,
what's your point, Alan? Is this why? Are you going to play? Actually, I'm not even going to take a chance on it. I'm just so tired of concern trolls. Oh, Joe Biden's just not good enough for me. Andrew in Springfield, Missouri. Hey, Andrew, what's up?
Hey, Tom, listen, I received in the mail, my wife received a letter in the mail the other day. It was a survey or a questionnaire from a Republican fundraising committee in a white envelope with a yellow return postal paid envelope inside the white envelope. And it was printed on the left-hand top corner, Rush, printed on it, and in yellow and red letters. And a barcode on the letter plus a request for a donation. So I'm wondering if anybody else in Missouri are getting these type of letters and returning them back to the committee, the fundraising committee, and when they send it back, they have a barcode on the bottom of it that they can trace where this letter came from and who this person is. And that's what I'm trying to make sure that my wife did not send that back, and she didn't. But don't ask me.
What's your specific concern, Andrew?
Go ahead.
No, I get it, that they'll know that who you are when you send it back. But who sent it out? I'm sorry, I missed the first couple words.
The Republican fundraising committee. It's on the envelope. I just don't remember because it was 2 weeks ago. But it comes from their committee. It comes in a white envelope, and the return envelope is yellow with a red letter printed.
No, I get all that. One of the things to particularly look out for, if you're getting a fundraising mailing from the Republican National Committee, RNC, or the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee, the RSCC, or the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee, the RCCC, those are probably legitimate. But there are literally dozens that we know about, and probably hundreds that we don't, of phony organizations that are fundraising. And frankly, Donald Trump seems to be selling his email list to some of these, because some of these super PACs, I know he's very involved in at least one of them that has raised over $100 million. I think it's because he thinks he can keep the money after the election, and he can, in all probability. We're also looking into the $100 and some odd million that he raised for the inaugural, more than almost 3 times as much as Barack Obama did. And then they didn't spend it on anything that you could see. How did they steal that money? But there's some real scam operators out there, operating on behalf of or in the name of, not necessarily on behalf of, in the name of Donald Trump, just like this one that Steve Bannon got busted for. Yes, we're going to build a wall, send us money. And people sent in $25 million, and then they used it to buy, crazy stuff. So it's pretty amazing. Andrew, thank you for the call. Douglas in Crystal City, Missouri. Hey, Douglas, what's up?
Yeah, hi, Tom. I just wanted to make a comment about the presidential debate. You know that Trump's going to be lying through his teeth. So why don't the Democrats just bring maybe 2 people and let it leak out that they're going to be doing fact checking? And I guarantee you, as egotistical as he is, if he sees them guys browsing through the computer, every time he says something that's wrong, it will rattle him.
Well, I think what would rattle him is if the moderators have the ability to interject truth when he lies. We have never had, we've had presidents and candidates who, tell the kind of your classic political lies. Like when George Herbert Walker Bush accused Michael Dukakis of letting Willie Horton out of jail. Well, yeah, Dukakis was governor when that happened, but the program of putting death row inmates on furlough, that program was actually started by the Republican governor before Dukakis, and Dukakis had no personal knowledge of Willie Horton whatsoever. It was just that program was running on autopilot into his administration. So when Bush said that, it was technically true, but, there was a lie underneath it. Those kind of things we're kind of used to. But the lies that Donald Trump tells are just plain old flat out, pull them out of your backside, make stuff up from scratch, stuff. And I think that it's a very legitimate concern. And I am hopeful that the moderators for these, or that the networks can even come up with a different format so that after every back and forth between two candidates, what they both said can be fact-checked. I'd love to see Joe Biden fact-checked, too. That will show the contrast, in my opinion. Douglas, I think you're onto something. Connie in Buffalo, New York. Hey, Connie, what's up?
Hi. I just wanted to comment. You had a caller earlier that said he doesn't see very many Biden signs. And I just wanted to say, I think it's because the Trump followers are stealing them. Because I've had mine stolen. I can't even put a sign out without them stealing your sign.
Yeah. And also, I made that comment and then I looked over on Twitter. And by the way, somebody corrected me on Twitter. They said the whole People's Party thing is not going to be putting up a candidate in this cycle. And they're all about trying to push Biden in a more progressive direction. If that's the case, then I withdraw my condemnation. I just don't know that much about it. And I need to learn more about it. But as to the signs, a whole bunch of people on Twitter were saying, I didn't put out a sign because I'm afraid, of my house getting caught on, somebody torching my house or things like that. I have a friend who got a Biden T-shirt and won't wear it because it's like, I'm afraid that people will harass me or beat me up or something like that. These bully tactics that worked so well for Mussolini in the 1920s in Italy, where he had his black shirt, his volunteer goon squad go out and trash people, threaten people, beat people up, and now you've got these guys coming into Portland shooting paint guns at people. And now one of them's being sued, but it's a drop in the bucket. I think that these bully tactics are working, and I don't think that that's a good thing for our political process or for democracy. Spot on, Connie. Thank you very much for the call, and thanks for pointing that out. Steve in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Hadn't talked to you in a while, but I'm always listening, Tom. Always listening. Hey, real quick about the debate. You had a caller that said, "What is Biden going to do when Trump starts lying?" And what he needs to do is just what Trump did to Hillary. You just interrupt him and just say, wrong. Remember that?
Yeah.
Just play his game.
Well, and Reagan did a variation on that to Jimmy Carter, because Jimmy Carter's debate prep book had been stolen and given to the Reagan campaign. And when somebody stole George Herbert Walker Bush's debate prep book and gave it to the Clinton campaign, before anybody even opened it up and looked at it, they called the FBI and turned it over. But the Reagan campaign actually read Carter's debate prep book. So Reagan knew what Carter was going to say and where he was going to go. And so when Carter did it, Reagan just started saying, well, there he goes again, as if Carter had lied. When in fact he hadn't lied, but there he goes again. It was probably the most famous line of the 1980 debates. So I think that Biden should borrow that. I'm with you, Steve. I think that's a great suggestion. Charlie in Madison, Wisconsin. Charlie, got a minute to the break. You had a quick one?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, you need an address to register to vote. And that provides a pretty good motivation for McConnell and Trump to actually want people to be evicted.
I agree. I think that's one of the reasons why Congress let the eviction moratorium expire, because the more people who get evicted from their homes, Keep in mind the profile, the economic and political profile of people who are getting evicted from their homes is, more likely to be people who are concerned about things like food stamps or unemployment insurance. And those are things that the Democrats brought you. They're the things that the Republicans oppose. So if they can get people who are economically on the edge and might be inclined, therefore, to vote Democratic, to no longer have an address so they can't vote, victory! I mean, this is just like Kevin McCarthy bragging about how his committee's investigations into Hillary Clinton's, was going to win the election. I mean, it's never about the issues for Republicans, or almost never about the issues. It's usually about how can they most effectively cheat, because frankly, that's the only way that they can hold power. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It deserves repeating again. We have not had a Republican president elected by the majority of Americans since 1988. And welcome back. Joyce in Bentonville, Illinois. Hey, Joyce, or Bensonville. Hey, Joyce, what's up?
Near O'Hare Airport, Chicago.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that the party that they're building is not until 2024, and Cornel West has vehemently said we must get the gangster out of the White House to vote Biden. I just wanted to tell you that it's not like a anti-Biden movement right now at all. It's just going forward against corporate power. That's all.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Joyce. Like I said, I need to learn more about it and figure it out.
Have a great day.
Are you okay? All right. Thanks a lot, Joyce. I appreciate the call. Whoop! Damn. This we get a 1 or 2 second delay here, and I push the button, and then a second later I get the audio in my ear. It's very frustrating. I mentioned before the last break about Kimberly Guilfoyle and Donald Trump Jr. This is bizarre. First of all, Kimberly Guilfoyle is Donald Trump Jr.'s girlfriend. She's paid $180,000 a year to be his girlfriend, basically. And Laura Trump, Eric Trump's wife, is paid $80,000 a year because she's his wife. They're being paid with donations coming into the Republican Party, but, this is what's so. And Donald Jr. and Kimberly visited. They went to a fundraiser for. She's a fundraiser. They went on vacation to France. Now this was a few months ago. They went on vacation to France and posting photos on social media and all this sort of thing. It turns out that you and I, taxpayers, paid $31,104 for their first-class air travel. We paid $23,000 for their hotel rooms for 2 nights, July 11th and 12th, and split between the Hotel des Serres and the Prince de Galles. $23,000 for Don and Kimberly, 2 nights in a hotel. $23,000 you and I paid for. An additional $10,000 you and I spent to rent them an armored car in Paris. It's mind-boggling, and we don't know how many Secret Service agents traveled with the pair. We don't know how much they spent on food, because that doesn't get reported. Just the hotels and airfare get reported. And what's so bizarre is that as Trump and Guilfoyle are doing this little world trip, they are complaining about nepotism and privilege in the Biden family. Hunter Biden, oh my God, Hunter Biden got a job because his daddy was VP. Probably true. But so did Don. So did Don Jr. So did Eric. So did Ivanka. So did Jared. I mean, this is pretty amazing. This is what Kimberly Guilfoyle said. We've got this problem with China because Biden and his policies and the way he allows his son to profit off his office. And she's getting $15,000 a month from the Republican Party, or through the Trump campaign. It's coming via Brad Parscale's private firm. One White House advisor said odds of Guilfoyle having gotten her job if she hadn't been dating Trump Jr. were, quote, less than 0 if that's possible. Bingo. Back with more of your calls in just a minute. Stick around. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour here. The Thom Hartmann Program, taking back the mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. The Hidden History of Monopoly tells how Robert Bork, that guy from the Reagan era, transformed corporate America and destroyed the American dream. Hi, Thom Hartmann here. My new book is out, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream. American monopolies dominate, control, and consume most of the energy of our entire economic system. They function the same as cancer does in a body, and like cancer, they weaken our systems while threatening to crash the entire body economic. American monopolies have also seized massive political power and use it to maintain their obscene profits and CEO salaries while crushing small competitors. In the foreword by Ralph Nader, he says, quote, "This is the most important dynamic book on the cancers of monopoly by giant corporations written in our generation," end quote. It's the fourth in my Hidden History series. Available where all fine books are sold. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy starts with you. Tag, you're it. And welcome back. Eric in Minneapolis. Hey, Eric, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I was just calling. I think people are reading too much into this Massachusetts race where they're thinking that Lackey won because he is more progressive. And I believe that he won because people are just have Kennedy fatigue. It could be that Lackey was doing a great job, had no reason to replace him. And people, the Kennedys, maybe people are just tired of thinking that Kennedy is going to become the next senator.
Yeah, it's possible. And one of the things that could influence that is, we saw what happened when Bush Jr. became president and the way that he totally screwed up our country, more than doubled the national debt, got us in 2 wars that were interminable and continue to be, lied about, all kinds of things, including torture and mass and murder and things like that. So the idea, and now you've got Trump talking about his daughter Ivanka being the next president, the first woman president in America, and the party, wanting to make Don Jr. their nominee. And I just, I think maybe dynasty fatigue is setting in. But frankly, I don't think it's that people didn't vote for Joe Kennedy, because Joe Kennedy was really beloved in Massachusetts. He had a seat that he would have been able to sit in for the rest of his life, in all probability. He was very, very popular. He had to give up that seat to run against Markey, so he had to believe that he could beat Markey. Markey's 74. Maybe Kennedy thought this was the way he was going to push him into retirement. I don't know. I don't know what happened on the inside, but I think strategically it was a huge mistake on Joe Kennedy's part. And, but it is what it is. Holly in Chicopee, Mass. Hey, Holly. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that or you want to talk about something altogether different, but you're on the air.
Well, yeah, I know you have a couple minutes. I did vote for Markey for one of the things because I went to the Green New Deal town hall meeting in Northampton, and he was there for, just supporting it. And I liked what he had to say, and I've always been a fan of him, so I voted for him. But I also wanted to mention about a possible upcoming debate with Trump and Joe Biden. And with the Hillary debate, I don't know if people remember, but Trump always piggybacked off of whatever Hillary said. The moderators never asked him a question first. It was always her. Now, that's one of the debates I saw. I don't think in any of the debates he was asked questions first. It was always piggybacking off of her idea. I think this time around, if the moderators can ask him a question every once in a while first, it'll show, he's a fraud and he'll just go off on his crazy tangents. So I don't know if that can be one of the rules, but that's just, I was screaming at the TV last time. So I don't know what you thought of that.
And then him, hulking over Hillary,
Yeah,
I mean,
it was
just
horrible.
like,
it was horrible.
she should have turned around and kicked him in the nuts. I mean, it's just like that was crazy. And I am concerned about the debates. I'm not concerned that Joe's going to do a terrible job. I'm concerned that Donald's going to pull out lies. And I think that to a large extent, the fate and future of our democracy hangs on the quality of moderation that's going to be done in this thing. So, Holly, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. Thank you. Yep. Thank you. Bob in Riverside, Illinois. Hey, Bob, what's up?
Hi. Thank you. I just really quickly wanted to make a suggestion as far as how to lower the unemployment rates since they're going up because of COVID. Maybe make an offer, do a buyout for people that are age 60 to 67. Some of them are just waiting right now to reach their magic retirement age number so they can collect their Social Security. Buy them out. Offer them an early retirement. That would, I think, get a lot of people out of the
proposed this, Bob,
market.
in a I proposed this in a chapter in a book I wrote called Rebooting the American Dream back in 2012. It's the book that Bernie sent around to all 99 other senators. And my point was that if we lowered the retirement age, the Social Security retirement age to 55, then two things would happen. Number one, it would clear a lot of people out of the labor market. About half those people between 55 and 65 would probably just decide to retire. And that would increase... Exactly. And what that would do is that would bring young people into the labor market. It would give them an opportunity to get in. And it would also tighten up the labor market, which would drive wages up. By driving wages up, you're driving up collection of the Social Security tax. So more people would be paying more on the Social Security tax, and it would be basically self-funding. It wouldn't hurt Social Security. It would help Social Security. So I am totally with you, Bob, and I think that's a very, very good idea.
Now, and at this point right now, because Joe Biden, and God, I hope he wins, he's already talking about bringing Medicare down to age 60 instead of 65. So a person like me who's 50, who is unemployed right now because of everything going on, and I'm close to it, I'm almost ready to retire. I'm just not without Social Security at the moment. I would jump on the offer.
Yeah, and that's one of those that's one of those camel's nose under the tent things. If you can lower the Medicare eligibility age down to 50, then what you're going to find is a whole bunch of people under 65 are suddenly going to be being exposed to Medicare and figuring out, hey, this is a damn good program and it's cheap. Maybe everybody should have this. Bob, thank you for the call. Brilliant. And thank you for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same bat time, same bat place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Tell your friends how to find good progressive media. Share the story of our program and other programs that you watch or listen to with them. We'll see you tomorrow. Be good to yourself and those people around you. Have a good afternoon.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are Omaha Steaks, gourmet you can trust. More information at omahasteaks.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro, phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. Plexiderm Wrinkle Reducer, real science, real results. More info at plexiderm.com, code TOM. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. And TEEF, TEEF, Smarter Pet Dental Health. For more information, teef.com, code TOM.